Everyone, it is 1 o'clock on the appointed day of March the 28th for our council meeting this afternoon. And I want to welcome everyone to join us live again today, and to those who are joining us through Rogers or our YouTube live feed. Welcome to staff and to all of our councillors that are here. I'm sure Councillor Vickers will be joining us momentarily. And with that, I will declare this meeting open. Call it to order, and we will begin with the land acknowledgement from Councillor Bell.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash, unceded First Nation, and Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation. We also recognize the Métis, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. We extend our gratitude to all Anishinaabe and Métis people and their descendants, past, present, and future, who continue to care for and inhabit these lands and tend these waters.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. I will ask you all to join us in a moment of reflection as we consider the business before us. Thank you. And once again, as we consider the troubles in our troubled world, it is always a good idea to reflect on the riches that we enjoy in our community and in our country. Freedoms of the press, freedoms to speak, freedoms to assemble. And we're very, very thankful and grateful for that. And our hearts and prayers are with all of those who are suffering under oppression in our world. Thank you all. And I will ask if there is any disclosure of interest around the horseshoe on any of the agenda items, knowing that it can be declared at any point within the meeting. Seeing none, we'll move on to announcements. And I'll start at this time. We had this past weekend was Earth Hour, an annual event that brings attention to the importance of saving our planet. And for 1 hour, the folks turned off their lights and reflected on the work that still needs to be done to address climate change. And we always look forward to this time just to bring our attention to what we can do, what we might be able to do in terms of climate change. Also on this weekend, Friday afternoon, the Meaford Chamber of Commerce held their annual AGM event at Meaford Hall. And it was great to see everyone here in person. It's been a long time coming. And I just want to take this moment to thank the Chamber of Commerce for all that they have done to help our businesses through these troubled period of the last 2 years, 2 and a bit years. It was a wonderful event, and there also was the annual Chamber Awards night as well. And so we have some winners that have been nominated by their customers and clients, and a great number of nominations came forward this year. And so congratulations to all of the winners. We did kind of cobble together the names of all of the winners. And so they were Lorraine Bowie from the Midas Mart, won the Peter Francis Award. Maggie and Dix won the Customer Service Award. Higginson Farms won the Farmer of the Year Award. Graham Lambs won the Tourism Award. And Gray Heron, the Most Improved Business. The Apothecary, a new business in town, won the Business of the Year Award. Good Farms won the Agribusiness, and Imagine Meaford won the Special Merit Award. It was wonderful to see so many new faces, new young faces in the crowd Friday night, and it was a great evening all the way around. Ended with a Meaford trivia competition, And I have to say our council team did pretty well. We lost in the tie vote at the very end. So we got to the top with most of the right answers. It was a great night, and it was great to have everyone in person and celebrating the achievements of the business award winners, but also the Chamber of Commerce and the year that they've had, and the due diligence that they've provided to all of us. Also wanted just to mention on this that they have an online auction in play right now, and there's lots of items to be bid on. There was a live auction, which has been traditional with the Chamber Awards night. Outgoing MPP Bill Walker joined us for a brief trial as an auctioneer, and a great time was had by all. So check out the Chamber's online auction and support local business. That is integral to our economic recovery. Just another quick announcement, and that is our spring printed newsletter will be arriving in your mailboxes this week. It has a lot of very important municipal updates, so please check it out. You can also check out a digital copy from our website. Are there any other announcements around the table, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. And I certainly would agree that Friday was a great night for the Chamber. And I thought I might just add appreciation to our own Rob Voigt, who was the guest speaker and gave the attendees an update on the official plan process, which was appreciated. And there is going to be a turnover of the Chamber president. Scott Gooch is retiring, and Rob Uhrig will be the new president as soon as he gets back from a trip that he is currently on abroad. I had a couple of announcements, if I may, Your Worship. The job fair, just a reminder, we've spoken to this before, but this is just incredibly important for our community. So our job fair will be at the community center between 2 and 6 p.m. on the 5th of April. There are 32 businesses signed up to date with over 156 jobs. And these are not all hospitality and tourism jobs. There are good jobs on the list. So I really strongly encourage people to come out and check out the opportunities. On behalf of the Rotary Club, I wanted to mention the Easter egg hunt, which is coming up on Saturday, the 16th of April. It'll be at Beautiful Joe Park, and they will have different categories, different age groups for the children attending. The Easter Bunny himself will be there, and there will be a coloring contest and fun for all, I believe, at Beautiful Joe Park. To register, you can go to www.meafordrotary.ca. And my last announcement on behalf of Elect Her Grave Bruce. And this is a group that has come together to support women primarily, but anyone who chooses to run for office this summer and fall. So there will be a campaign school that is offered by Elect Her. It will be a virtual event and will take place every Tuesday evening during the month of April, starting at 7 p.m. The first subject is how to decide to run. The second is building your team, your plan, and your finances. I will be a panelist on that one. The third one is getting your message out, and Mayor Klumpus will be a panelist at that event. And the fourth one is a wrap up and ask us anything. So visit the Elect Her website for further information and to sign up for that event. And that's it for me. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Anyone else with announcements today? Seeing none, then we'll move on to public participation. And again, I want to remind everyone listening in and our public that we welcome folks coming forward to do a presentation to council on any topic of their choice, or to bring forward a deputation on any of the agenda items that we have for discussion at a council meeting, or even ask a question of council and staff. And we just ask that those who wish to participate, please, as either a deputation or a question, let our clerk's office know by 10 o'clock in the morning of the council meeting, so that we can be prepared for your participation. And with that, I want to welcome Lynn Munkley to tell us all about the Meaford Hospital Volunteer Gardeners and the wonderful job that they've been doing. Welcome, Lynn. It's good to see you.
Thank you very much. Do I need this? Can you?
Yes, please, because we're recorded.
Oh, okay.
But maybe we need to lower it a little bit. Help is on the way. Oh, there, you've done it. You've done this before, Lynn, I can tell.
Not doing the job properly here.
You
There we go.
you got her
Okay.
now.
Okay, is this okay?
That's great. Yeah,
My-
thank you.
Okay. Okay, so my role is here today is to report on the spending of the use of the bursary funds that were provided to the Meaford Hospital Volunteer Gardeners. Good afternoon, your worship and councillors. The gardeners are very grateful to council for the community bursary. The funds supported the renovation of the existing gardens and the development of a very special new garden that was requested by the Hospital Foundation. Your contribution was also a welcome vote of confidence that supported our other fundraising efforts. What follows here is number one, a description of what we accomplished in 2019 through 2021 and a projection for 2022. The nature of our work allowed us to continue during COVID. Two, a spreadsheet that indicates where the bursary installments were spent from 2019 through 2021 and where they will be allocated for 2022. And number three, notes on the impact of the work in the community. So 2019, it was the Welcome Garden. This is the garden that lines the walkway to the hospital's main entrance. We enlarged the garden by removing a patch of very weedy lawn. We installed an irrigation system and added a new plant stock. The garden is now a 3-season welcome. Also in 2019, we amended the very depleted soil in most of the gardens with 10 yards of mulch and 10 yards of triple mix. And that is, for trivia people, 7 to 12 tons, depending on the moisture content. It was a pretty dry spring, so we did not have any injuries. This was made possible by the bursary and the contribution of other community donors. In 2020, we worked on the Nelson Street Garden and something called the Memorial Healing Garden. The hospital asked if we could renovate the garden at the main entry sign on Nelson Street. This is another welcome. This renovation was supported by the bursary. Also in 2020, we were asked by the Hospital Foundation to enhance a small garden behind the hospital overlooking the ravine. The foundation had received a donation dedicated to the creation of a sanctuary there for patients, staff, and families. That foundation donation paid for a crushed stone patio and one bench. We were able to create, from our funding, beautiful gardens with grants from the Community Foundation Grey Bruce and private in memoriam donations of benches and specimen plants. The Memorial Healing, this is the Memorial Healing Garden. The hospital staff made a generous donation to this garden to honor the memory of a much-loved nurse. In 2021, we returned to irrigation. Hand watering has been the volunteer gardeners' biggest bugaboo. We were able to apply the 2021 bursary to installing irrigation in the Memorial Healing Garden. Through the generosity of other donors, we were also able to install irrigation covering the ambulance garden and the Nelson Street sign garden. This year, we plan to apply the bursary funds to the semi-annual servicing of the 3 irrigation systems, soil amendments, plant replacement, and the replacement of a dead tree. There's a spreadsheet in the material that was provided. And we were also asked to report to you on the impact on the community of this work. Our favorite measure of impact is what is said to us while we are at work in the gardens. Both the public and the staff stop to tell us how much they love the gardens. We have had so many questions from visitors and staff about plantings that we installed plant labels. During COVID, the impact was very particular. Family members unable to go inside the hospital could wait in the gardens while family were inside for tests or emergency visits. The Memorial Healing Gardens, the new gardens behind the hospital, provided a peaceful setting for COVID era window visits and window last rites. We designed those gardens to be visible from the palliative unit. The Memorial Healing Gardens also provided a sanctuary for staff during very stressful COVID years. They took breaks and their lunch in privacy there, and management took their laptops out to work at the picnic table. One generous donor to the hospital foundation wanted no fanfare. He simply asked to have his name on a stone in a garden. The donation was $100,000. This was not a donation to the gardens. It was a donation to the foundation by somebody who loves gardens. Last summer, the hospital foundation presented us with a thank you gift. It is a beautiful Coosa dogwood, and it is planted in the gazebo garden, and it should have a really big show this spring. We took donations to our project as a vote of confidence. There is a list of community, business, and service donors included in the submitted package. We also installed a recognition plaque in the Welcome Garden. The Community Foundation Grey Bruce took particular interest in the Memorial Healing Garden and donated generously. Their mission links gardens with health and healthy communities. I would like to read a couple of notes. This from Rob Peacock, who is the CEO of the Meaford Hospital Foundation. On behalf of the Meaford Hospital Foundation, I would like to take this opportunity to extol the virtues of the Meaford Hospital Gardens. These outstanding horticultural exhibits provide such great warmth for our visitors and patients alike and make a significant difference to the community as a whole. The volunteer leadership exemplified each year is most worthy of note because it brings everyone together in such an important and meaningful way. We salute the Gardening Committee for their tremendous annual outreach, which is enjoyed by everyone throughout the Meaford Hospital. And this note is from Chief of Staff, Dr. Natalie Soriel. I am writing to share my appreciation and thanks for the work that all you do to help create a calm and healing environment for staff, physicians, patients, and visitors to the Meaford Hospital. The beautiful gardens are enjoyed by all staff and physicians as they enter the building and also in the warmer seasons during their much-deserved breaks. Patients also benefit from the outdoor spaces when they are coming for testing or procedures. They often also enjoy these peaceful areas with their family members while inpatients in our facility. These spaces would not have been possible without the generous giving of your time and energy, as well as the donations and funding that you received to make this all possible. When we applied for this bursary, we said that this will be a one-time ask. We can make that commitment in part because of the public's enthusiastic support of our annual plant sale. That revenue will cover annual expenses going forward. And thank you again for making our work possible and for this wonderful support of community initiatives.
Thank you, Lynn. And the gardens are spectacular. You folks have done just such a wonderful job in creating a space that is memorable, that is beautiful, that is very calming, very restful, and very much appreciated, not only by those within the hospital, but those who must approach the hospital for sometimes not very pleasant and happy situations. It's just wonderful. And we watched it grow, we watched it bloom over the years. And thank you so much for all that you have contributed to that. And we hope that you'll pass on our remarks to the rest of your small but mighty crew that are out there and enjoying their skills in playing in the gardens and creating such a beautiful surroundings for all of us to enjoy. Thank you for that. And I will ask if anyone on council has a question of you or a comment. Oh,
Thank you.
well done. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. We have no deputations or public questions coming forward, so we'll get on now to council inquiries. Anyone from council, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. I had two today, if I may. The first for Mr. Armstrong. I'm wondering if we might soon see a new org chart. I know we have a number of new staff with us now, and it just might be helpful if we had a new chart so we know who was here and where they were and what they were doing.
Through your worship, yeah, we can get an updated org chart. It's changing regularly and there'll be more changes coming. So yeah, we can get the current updated one to you. That's not a problem.
Thank you. And your worship, if I may ask a second question, is Jessica over there in the corner? Yes, you are. It's an odd question to ask today with winter returning, but I noticed a few days ago that sand was being cleaned up on the sidewalks. And I just wondered if that sand was going to be reused. Can it be saved and used again next year?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'm in the corner. We did start doing some cleanup in the spring, well, when spring happened, and now we're back to winter for a couple of days. Generally, we don't reuse a lot of it just because we don't always know what's in it. So when we clean up stuff off the road, it's not exactly the same material that we would have put down in the first place, given stuff that's mixed in or added to it. So it's not that it can't be used for maybe other purposes, but we don't generally always use it to itself.
Thank you.
Councillor Vickers?
Yep, through your worship. Actually, I have three inquiries here. And the first one I'd like to actually direct to yourself and the deputy mayor. And it has to do with the comments the deputy mayor brought forward last week or 2 weeks ago about the ability for not farms being able to pick up plastic on the agriculture farms, and even for people that use it for the wraps on their boats and all different uses of plastic. I did call him. It's the person that I've been using for quite a few years now, and he does charge $6 a bag. For each bag that you use. I would consider ourselves to be a light user of plastic because we have a few tower silos. And I looked up in our books there this week, and we spent over $500 on gathering and getting this plastic, keeping it out of the landfill site. So with that, you can see how another farm that had 3 or 4 times as much, it gets to be quite a hefty bill. So where I'm going with this on my question is, has the county got any further down on a waste management proposal or study? Because I really do feel that is the answer. That is where the answer is going to come in county-wide waste management.
And my answer to that, Councillor Vickers, is that we have heard nothing subsequent to the last message we had, that it is in progress. They are exploring it. But we've had no update, but we'll certainly ask about that and bring an answer next time we meet.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I think everybody else would. It would be nice to know how they're progressing and what steps they're taking to get the study completed. My second question is actually to either Rob or Rob. In the last 2 weeks ago, I keep saying last week, 2 weeks ago, we had quite a robust discussion about not low income housing, the lack of housing that's in the municipality and how it's affecting everybody within the municipality. And you keep reading the correspondence, it keeps coming up over and over and over again. And some of the issues, one theme that I've seen is talking about the Ontario Land Tribunal, which is a former OMMB. I would be interested to know what your thoughts, because I hear people from Markham and Aurora asking it to be disbanded completely. Other people says it needs to be modified. Maybe it needs to be taken back to where it was before. I just wanted a bit of an idea what our planners think. And Rob, you're our planner, and Rob, you're our former planner. So I feel you both have great deal amount of knowledge. Because I look at this and I got thinking about it. Even Mr. McIntosh with his glamping domes, he passed it. It went through council. We discussed it. We decided what was appropriate. It went to the next step. It got appealed at the tribunal, got held up for a certain period of time. I'm not exactly sure how long. And now all of a sudden he couldn't get the domes he wanted. He had to come back to council to ask for another bylaw. I think because the new domes were going to be a little bit bigger than the old ones. And I just look at this and it seems like there's an incredible amount of time that has gone by on Mr. McIntosh. And, it's not maybe housing, it's a different purpose, but just shows how somebody with maybe, I guess it's their right to oppose the decision, but how much it held up the whole process of it. So I'd be interested to know your opinion on what you think the Ontario Land Tribunal is about and what maybe modifications, if any, need to maybe should or could happen that would speed up the process.
Through your worship, I'll take a first shot at it, and maybe Mr. Armstrong wants to add something. So it is a bit of a, as you can appreciate, it's a complex matter. For the folks listening, it's essentially, if we can refer to it maybe as its planning court, if you will, right? And that's the idea that there are certain decisions with the Planning Act that can be appealed to the Land Tribunal. It has changed since it was the OMB a number of years ago, and has gone through a number of changes. The provincial governments of the day, each time they've made the recent changes, have been to try to find a balance between the way they view the public interest and the ability to appeal decisions, and making sure that it still allows for upholding the requirements of the Planning Act. I think it's fair to say that there are times across the province when certain applications that are brought to this, quote, planning court, perhaps are frivolous, right? In the sense that people are trying to just gunk up the works for something that they don't agree with. At other times they have, I think the majority of the time, a very heartfelt and kind of provable positions that are worth considering within that framework. I'm happy to put together something for council that perhaps outlines our division's perspective of this. In simplest form, I will say though that some variation of the Land Tribunal I think is appropriate, but I think there's a lot of kind of pros and cons that if it were up to if it were council's directive, I'd be happy to put that together for it.
I may ask one more question, and whether you can, or maybe Rob wants to speak to it. I don't know. But my one more question that I do have about this is, if we took all the development and housing developments that are caught in this Ontario Land Tribunal right now, do you think that would make an appreciable difference if those developments could be pushed through the development part of it and get to the building part?
Through your worship, it's undoubtedly there are significant impacts, not just only on what you might consider the housing inventory that's available, that's caught in this system. I think the greater impact, quite frankly, across the province is the costs that are associated with that. As any product that comes into market, all the costs it took to create that end up at the hands of the customer to handle. And when you have appeals that can cost very easily in the many hundreds of thousands of dollars, you just need to divide that by the number of units that are being sold in any such development, and opportunity costs for the loss of time, et cetera, that will be borne in the marketplace. I don't think there is enough of a backlog at the Land Tribunal that would significantly change the market in terms of numbers, but it definitely is jacking up the costs.
Rob?
It's interesting, as it applies to the municipality of Meaford. I know there was a report, and they get county council gets regular reports on active applications that are gone to the tribunal to be looked at. Luckily, this municipality, we've had a few small ones, but none of our big ones have gone to the tribunal, we've been able to resolve them, get them approved. I look at Loon Call as a great example. Years ago, Meaford Haven, where there was some concern. So right now, I would say on those larger developments, this communities hasn't been affected, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to be in the future. But to date, we've been very fortunate to be able to get through the process and not end up at the tribunal on those larger development applications to provide housing.
So I probably will be bringing a notice and motion forward to, is that the proper procedure, Your Worship?
Yes, when we reach that
Yes,
point.
yeah,
in
at that point,
in our
for sure.
agenda. Yeah, look forward to that.
So
And
I do have one more if there isn't.
I'm going to go to
Okay.
Councillor Greenfield first, and then I'll come back to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, thanks, Your Worship. This is a question for Jessica, and on behalf of the good folks who live in the village of Bogner. I've been hearing that there's a sign missing that announces basically the village of Bogner, and it has been missing now for some time. I understand it's just north of the village on County Road 29, or it was. But anyway, the Bogner folks are asking, what happened to our sign? And we want it back. Can you help us out, Jessica?
Certainly, through you, Madam Chair, it's the Bogner sign caper. We installed a lot of those historic signs last year. I'm sure everyone can remember. There's one in Annan, the one in Bogner. And oddly enough, the one in Bogner was taken by someone who isn't or shouldn't have taken it. We had thought it was the county had thought it was us, and it all came down to the fact that someone actually stole the Bogner sign. Since then, we have, as you can imagine, it took a long time to design them. They were very intricate, they're very large, like it was very heavy. And we are in the process of getting another one made. Because the contract with that company was done, we had to find someone else. So anyway, long story short, is a new one is being made and hopefully will be installed in the near future with some additional hardware that will hopefully prevent anyone from taking it again.
On behalf of the good folks in Bogner, thank you so much for that. Good news. It's a matter of time.
It is, yes.
Thank you, Jessica. Back to you, Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Worship. And this question is directed to Rob. We have TCE is obviously a very large project in our community, and they've proceeded through the first stage of being whether the DND will accept them up there. Some time has passed, and I was wondering, has staff thought about how we're going to start engaging with TCE if the project is approved after the environmental assessment? Has the municipality considered what our involvement, what our community betterment might be with the project if it does proceed, if it does get past the environmental assessments? And I just wondered if you had any idea of timelines or any plan that staff had to enter discussions with TCE.
Over to you, Rob.
To your worship, thanks for the question. So more on the formal process side, it's been identified through the staff report that we will engage in the review. We will be retaining a project manager. And then that project manager will be securing the outside assistance of the professionals to review their professional work. We need to bring a report to council in the near future and that will deal with an agreement with TCNG wherein they will cover our costs. It's very similar to the process that we have with a development application that speaks to a developer paying for our review costs in support of an application. As soon as it gets into a situation, and this is reasonable across the board, as soon as we get into the situation where our consultant doesn't agree with their consultant and we enter into another situation, then our costs become our own and we'll need to deal with that. But that's the agreement that we need to bring on that. The big question is, and we've heard from other communities, in particular, I think it's Napanee, where they entered into a community benefit agreement with TC Energy with regard to the project up there, which speaks to those things that the municipality will receive in lieu of the development. Some of those things will come out through the review process if they get approval, such as road upgrades. So there'll be studies that will say road needs to be upgrades. We'll make sure that the community benefit agreement secures those road upgrades should they be required through that process, and that they pay for those costs. Other community benefits are out there. The biggest concern about proceeding now is with regard to that is the perception that things are being provided to the municipality to gain our support through the environmental assessment process. So we're very cognizant of that, the timing of those discussions. But I guess at the end of the day, if we believe that it's going to be approved, our objective is to make sure that this municipality is going to benefit to the best that we can. So I'd say that we're at the early thinking stages of what those would be outside of that. But timing, we wouldn't be actually formalizing those elements until they had their environmental assessment approval and we know that the project's proceeding.
So basically you're saying until the environmental assessment would be the next stage of the project. And then we would then talk to negotiate with TCE if the project was going ahead then.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. And I was just going to add to Councillor Vickers' question. At our last Economic Development Committee meeting on the 16th, I believe it was, of February, we did have representation from MDB, which is a consulting company that TC Energy has hired to look at economic impacts for our municipality. And we had a fairly lengthy discussion about that at that meeting. So I just going to suggest you might like to reach out to that group, Councillor Vickers, and have further conversation with them. It would be valuable for them, I think, to hear from your agricultural background. And yeah, Paul Blay. And anyway, I'm sure we can get you that contact if you wanted to speak with them. We haven't seen any report back or anything on that at this point in time, but they did come and present and ask for our input at economic development. So.
Thank you.
I don't see any other hands raised, so we will now move on then to point 8 on our agenda. 8.1 is the consent agenda, and we have 2 items for consideration under one motion today. The first is the Cook Street Reconstruction Tender, CAO 2022-11. The recommendation was that there be some moving of we've got the for financial services transferring funds for this project to fund the Cook Street project and to approve the award of tender for $2,235,031.20. The second one is Bylaw 2022-13 regarding, it's a bylaw to regulate open air burning. With these 2 items, are there either one of those that anyone wishes to pull? Councillor Bartley or Councillor Bell? I can assume both. Councillor Bell.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to pull the open air burn portion.
All right. In that case, then we'll go back to CAO 2022-11, the Cook Street Reconstruction Tender, and ask for a move and a seconder to put that on the table. Councillor Bartley and Councillor Greenfield. Any, all in favor of this moving forward? And that is carried. Thank you. And now we'll go to the bylaw 2022-13, the open air burn bylaw. And Councillor Bell, I'm assuming you will move that. And Councillor Bartley, will you second that?
I will so.
All right. Then I will turn it over to you, Councillor Bell, first for your comments.
Well, thanks, Madam Mayor. And I hope that my fellow councillors all have an opportunity to kind of voice your opinions on this. I've had a couple of weeks to think of this, and I know the rest of you also have. It's been a couple of weeks, Chief, since you and I talked about this. I think we need to redress this in a little different manner than what is being presented for our consideration here today. In particular, my concerns are with the little fire pits that folks have and their chimeneas and those little constructed outdoor areas that you could do your food up on. And I think what I have read into this that sort of really has engaged the fire department personnel, it's been the burning of garbage that seems to be the real ticket that has really engaged to consider what happens. And in particular, I'm really feeling that this is and I believe in the amalgamation and the rural and the urban people, but to me, it really has more to do with those urban centers where one neighbor's home or a couple of neighbors are really close to someone else. And then those individuals take it upon themselves, as the report says, they're going to burn garbage. And they're going to burn garbage in chimeneas and their food burning, their fire pits and things like that. And I just think that we need to spend a little more time to consider what does that mean when we're asking our municipal ratepayers, homeowners, landowners, if you've got a fire pit or a chimney, you're to notify the fire department. You've got one of these devices. And, you know, we read through the good work that has been done by the fire department personnel. There's a lot of good stuff in there about not putting your fire too close to a fence or by trees or overhanging wires and setting it up on something that's, you know, combustible. So we can recognize all that. But I think our issue here is the problem. It's the problem of the garbage. And I think that whether it's this sitting council or the next one coming, I really think that inside our municipality, we need to address the garbage. Why do individuals feel the need to go and take their garbage and dispose of it that manner? And I think that we need to look at the garbage pickup, the frequency, and that's another subject for the future. But I believe that a symptom we've got here is that people have got garbage and they're trying to find a means to get rid of it. The other aspect I'm thinking about is the enjoyment of our properties and family and friends. I just don't like to read where I'm to put the fire out at midnight. I think that when you've taken upon yourself and your family to have a little fire, a little get together in the evening, you've taken that responsibility onto yourself. I think it should just be your responsibility that before you retire, that you are taking care of that element that you have decided to choose for that evening's events. And I mean, just speaking for myself, 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, it has just, I mean, we gather around the fire. And I get my family who travel a great distance and we really enjoy. I'm sure everyone enjoys that family time and that getting together time. So I don't really see that we need to put a time that if we don't put the fire out by midnight and someone calls, then our bylaw officer is going to take the trip to tell you that you're in contravention because you're sitting around your fire later than what the bylaw says. So the timing of that, I just don't think we really need to have that micromanaging, if I can put it that way. With all the good intents of the fire department, they're, like I said early on and when I first started speaking, there's a lot of tremendous good stuff in here. But we're also trying to manage people to control their fires in a logical and responsible manner. So I think we need to spend some more time. I hope my fellow councillors chip in on this a little bit. The big stuff, the big burns, the bush fires, and the demolition fires, all the stuff that's there, I support that just as written. But it's this front end with the chimeneas and our little fire pits and so on. I think, I hope that you've been able to understand a little of what I'm thinking about it, that I think we need more time on this one before we approve it tonight. So I'll stop there, Madam Mayor. If any other councillor has something, I look forward to hearing their comments.
Thank you, Councillor Bell, and I'll next go to Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And first of all, I just want to say I do not want to scrap the bylaw. I've tried to read the bylaws of other municipalities. Some of them are really, really hard to find in their websites. Some are quite open, but none of them have as much regulations as this here one. And some of these regulations really do concern me. The number one is you can't have a fire if the winds are over 10K. I don't know of, there's only 2 days a year that the winds are under 10K. 10K is nothing. That number is too small for me. That's on page 32 of our agenda. I'd like to discuss that one. The next one is no front yard fires. Maybe in urban, that might be a rule. My neighbor across the road from me, his fire pits, he's got 50 acres. It is in the front of his house. It is no issue to anybody in the municipality but there's a bylaw saying he can't have that. It's on page 33, number 3-11. Mr. Bell, Councillor Bell said the big one, no fire after midnight. I don't know about other councillors or other people, but after midnight is where I solve all the world problems around the fire pit. And that's where we learn to get our vocal cords proper. It also, there's the size requirements of the fire pits. The first one is a 2.6 feet. That's exactly what my little fire pit is. I can understand that. Then you go to 3 feet. That's a 6-inch difference. The next one is over 10 feet. It jumps up so bad. My fire pit is more than 3 feet. It's in the middle of a field. It's far from any danger. I've had, I dare say, 1,000 fires in it without an issue. The whole thing comes down to, I think this bylaw, the regulations of this bylaw reminds me of two things. It's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I think there's some issues downtown that caused a lot of this to come forward. It reminds me of the time that there was people using the cannon as a washroom. So the municipality decided to shut fishing down for the municipality. We didn't let that go through. And I think I can see the same thing happening here because somebody's burning garbage, that the regulations of this is just way too outreaching. And I would like to seriously change some of the smaller ones. Like Councillor Bell, the large fires, the brush fires, the demolition fires, I agree with all the regulations in there. It's the small fires for enjoyment that I personally have an issue with. And I've talked to many, many people in the last 2 weeks about it. I've talked to firefighters from 3 different municipalities. And I asked them, and Chief, you can tell me if I'm wrong. I asked them how many fires get started, how many houses did we lose because of a small fire pit? And the answer was 0. You can correct me. There might have been a couple, but that's what their consideration is, that it's never happened. And I just got told by many people, you can bring the law in, I'm not following it. So I just don't know why we want to cause so much regulations for small fire pits, especially in the urban area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bartley. Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, and Your Worship. I just want to support what Councillors Bell and Bartley have said. We definitely need a bylaw to control burning garbage in urban Meaford. It's an environmental and a health issue. We definitely need a bylaw to control burning brush in rural Meaford because it's a safety issue and also it can lead to higher firefighting costs. But I think they're right. We have to be more realistic in the gradations for different fire sizes in a backyard and in rural settings. And I think if it's any help, I think we should let noise issues be bylaw enforcement, not part of an open fires bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kentner. Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks to my fellow councillors for discussing this this burn bylaw. Frankly, I think Chief Courtney and Ms. Hines have done a very, very good job putting this together. It might be a little heavy in places, but this fires can be a problem. I mentioned, I think the last council meeting, that I was concerned about only being able to have one controlled fire, which is the big fire per property. And I think that could be a little, maybe a little difficult for some of our farming activities. To speak to Councillor Bell's idea about the fire pit, I know Councillor Bell's a lot younger than I am. And he's good at staying up much later than I do. But I'm a little bit concerned if we happen to allow the fire pits, regardless of them being controlled, go till 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. There's something that goes along with that fire pit still burning, and that's the noise that accompanies the people around it. And maybe Ms. Hines would not be happy about having noise going on to 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. So I'm prepared to pass this, or to vote to pass this as is. As I say, I think there's been a lot of work put into it. In the future, if some aspect of the bylaw becomes just simply impossible for a number of people, then hey, we'll look at it again. We'll revisit it. But I appreciate the discussion, but I'm good with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greenfield. I'm not seeing any questions at this point, but I'll turn it over to Chief. Did you want to speak first, or Matt, who's going to respond at this point?
I'll perhaps go first, and then the chief will join in. I've been taking a few notes as council's had a conversation. Obviously, council can pass whatever bylaw they like. As always, this bylaw, as complex as it is, and we totally acknowledge that it is based on our best professional recommendation and our management of risk and so on. First thing I really want to make clear is that these changes to this bylaw are not about burning garbage. We've always banned burning garbage. We can prosecute burning garbage. The changes to this bylaw are about a whole variety of things. To update a bylaw that's dated from 2014 has proved a little difficult to enforce at times. It's as much about ensuring that rural fires are appropriate as it is about doing things in town. And it's absolutely about the fire department knowing where fires are or where they may be. And that's the point of getting the permits for the sort of the fire pits and so on. Like burning garbage is of course something you shouldn't do, but that is not the reason that this bylaw is coming forward. I think with regard to some of the comments about time and so on, we're clearly not going around the municipality at 12:01 on an evening, checking to see whether a fire's lit or not. We don't have staff to do that. We wouldn't do that anyway. That's not the way that we do our bylaw enforcement, which is a very reactive way of doing it. But again, it's about risk. Councillor Greenfield's just hit on the point that I really wanted to raise, is that, you know, if a fire is going after midnight, there's probably other things happening after midnight. That might be drinking, that might be all sorts of things. There might be noise. So it just increases the risk of the fire getting out of control. If there's no complaints, then we wouldn't do anything about it. Councillor Kent mentioned about noise and dealing with noise through the noise bylaw. Noise bylaws are exceptionally difficult to enforce. And ours is no exception to that, and in fact needs some work doing to it as well. And that is one of the things that Rob and Holly and team will be doing at some stage, but it's on the list. Having specifics in a bylaw like this mean that it is much easier to enforce when we need to, and only when we need to. I think that just saying that we would deal with noise under noise is hard, because I'm not going with a decibel meter, and neither are you, to know whether that noise is there, whereas we can say whether a fire pit is too big or too close to a fence or going on too late at night. If council does want to change things about times and so on, we're going to need to know where you think that applies. Does it apply everywhere? Does it apply only in certain areas of the municipality? That sort of stuff is going to have to happen. I think the other thing I'll say on that is that if council wants to change this, please somebody start making motions, because we need direction. We can't please don't just vote this down, because then we're stuck with a 2014 bylaw that doesn't really work. We need clear direction to go away and come back with an updated bylaw that meets what you're asking for. The other thing, my last comment, and then I'll pass over to the chief, see if he's got anything extra, is that this is the first time either the chief or I have heard of any of these issues. Please talk to us in the 2 weeks in between times, because we might be able to answer questions a bit easier then. That's why we do this, is so that, you know, council, you're talking about having talked to members of the public in the last 2 weeks. Great, that's what the purpose of the 2 week gap is. But come talk to us as well, because then we might actually have known something about some of these things and be able to respond a bit more effectively. Courtney.
Thank you, Matt. Over to you, Chief.
You know, definitely, I want to stress that I'm a big believer in having outdoor fires. I mean, that's one of the great things that we have in Meaford. This bylaw is not meant to be, you know, at 12 o'clock, we're driving around making sure people have their, you know, the backyards closed, that, you know, that we're controlling their chimneys to a point. It's just basically allowing the guidelines, and it's going to be a judgment thing. It's also to ensure people are actually aware of what the actual laws are. So when we go talk to them about the chimney and they happen to be throwing garbage into it, I can say you've had, you know, you've signed up for a permit, and you are well aware that you're not supposed to be lobbing garbage into your pit. As for the reason why we picked certain things, it was actually things that have happened in the last year and a half. Going out to at least 3 burn complaints where the winds were over 35, 40 kilometers an hour, and they had open fire, and it was actually whipping towards the house. As for a number of fires that have started in small chimneys that have, you know, prevented it in loss of buildings, in my career, I've had 5, on which 4 of them were barns, one of them being a house. So it is just trying to manage that risk. By any means, we are not going to be going out and, you know, knocking on doors saying you can't do that. It's more of a guideline and trying to make sure people are being safe while they're burning in their backyards, and that they're following the rules. We want, you know, I just bought a fire pit for my backyard because I love the idea of being able to do it. I also want to make sure that if I'm, you know, 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, that I'm not causing too much trouble for my neighbors either. We all have to live within the municipality and get along. So it was more, again, a guideline. Reality is, if we get called out at 2 o'clock in the morning and we arrive and everybody's quiet and the fire is nice and low and it's in control, I'm going to say congratulations. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. Can I get a marshmallow and I'm going to be on my way? But if I show up and, you know, there's lots of noise, there's smoke, they're starting to throw, you know, furniture. I responded last spring to someone here in Meaford who was burning large furniture in their backyard. They had bought a house and decided they were going to clean it out, and they started throwing not only bed frames, but had thrown an armoire onto the fire in the backyard. And again, you know, basically they didn't have a permit because they don't require one in town. So my only course of action was to remind them that they shouldn't be burning furniture in their backyards. So again, it's just trying to give guidelines and making sure that they're, you know, are within the rules. And, you know, again, the chimney is, you say it's not really an issue. Got called by a concerned neighbor downtown. One of the apartments on the second level has a wood patio, and somebody had a chimney on that wood deck on the second level. That could have taken out the downtown core if it had caught fire. So unfortunately, it's making sure people have guidelines to make sure they're being safe and making sure everybody else is safe as well.
One thing I
Thank you.
missed, Madam Mayor, was the reference to front yards. It does talk about front yards as defined in the zoning bylaw, but we would never think of a 50-acre parcel as a front yard. We're talking about the strip of grass in front of your house between you and the street. You know, it's the area that's related to the house. If you've got 50 acres of property, I don't really care whether it's front, back, side, it's 50 acres of property, and obviously that's treated differently.
Hey, thank you for that. And thank you, Chief. I've got another question, Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to Matt and to the Chief. The time thing, though, is you know, I know you won't be driving around you know, looking for fires at 12:01. But the neighbor that has a beef with the other neighbor or doesn't like something that the other neighbor does, you know, he's sitting there with his watch waiting for 12 o'clock to go. And then all of a sudden the complaint will be levied. Can you help us understand? So if somebody does that, you know, at 12 o'clock, they said, my neighbor's fire is still going. I want bylaw to come out and you know, put this down. Will bylaw come out at that point?
No, absolutely not. We don't have bylaw officers working at night. If we get a complaint about noise in the middle of the night, we would do exactly the same as we would do in this situation, which is go the next day and investigate. And again, as the Chief's very clearly said, it's about judgment call. We don't enforce 1 inch over the line when we're talking about yard maintenance. We don't enforce trying to think of other examples. Like 12:01 would not be something that we would ever lay a ticket for. However, if your fire is close enough to your neighbour that they are concerned about it at 12:01, then there probably should be some sort of limit to you, because you are impacting somebody. Now, if it's somebody who's clearly got a vendetta, we deal with that sort of thing on a regular basis. We have we have occasional people who complain relentlessly about a neighbour or somebody they don't like. Again, we make judgment calls about whether they're frivolous or vexatious, and we don't enforce those.
We also put something into the bylaw that if we do have somebody who is a constant complainer, that you actually require multiple complaints from more than one neighbor. So if they are absolutely pressing us to, you know, lay a charge, well, the answer is the bylaw states that you have to be more than just yourself that is impacted. So if they go around and get 4 or 5 neighbors to actually lodge a complaint, well, then that becomes more serious. But we actually have written in a bylaw that it doesn't necessarily need to be one person. So again, allowing us to have the flexibility to say, you know, sorry, we don't really consider it to be that big of a problem. Continue and pass me the marshmallow.
But if I can, but I can see that happening, because all of a sudden people are always looking for you know, the hammer to come down, and you know, they look at the bylaw and it says 12:01. You know, they're going to be calling. So like these are the situations that I think we can all see kind of materializing out through this bylaw. So I guess this is maybe where we're struggling to you know, pass this, because it just seems like it'll be something that we pass that will just be, you know, almost weaponized, that people don't like what their neighbors are doing, and they'll be using this as they're out to report them. So, you know, I would agree with my fellow councillors here that I do have concerns, and I'm not exactly sure how it'll all pan out. And I don't want to see the whole thing thrown out, because you know, I've thought about it for quite a bit the last couple of weeks. I can see where, you know, me having a fire in my backyard or Steve having a fire in his backyard is completely different than having, you know, people in town with the same desires or wants. So you know, I don't want to throw it all out, but I wonder if there doesn't need to be some refinements made.
With that in mind, then I'm going to ask for the comments that have come forward that we've heard to present us with an amendment or a motion to move forward on this to change something that you'd like to see changed within this. So if we can do that, we will vote on that and give direction to staff before we go any further with this, rather than just not accept it. So if you have something that you would like to put forward, Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to put forward then that we remove the midnight clause for the fire pits and chimeneas, that's just simply removed.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and that's for all properties throughout the municipality.
I'll clarify the midnight clause because I'm fully support the large burn about being put out early. I mean, that's just common sense. That's a big fire. You got it going. It's your fire pits, your chimney is your cooking area. If you're enjoying that, to remove that and just put in a clause that says when you retire for the evening that you extinguish your fire.
And through you, Madam Mayor, again, I'm trying to write at the same time, so please bear with me. That will be no restrictions at all. So 3:30 a.m. would still be fine in town. Okay.
I'm asking the question. Is that your intent, that we can have a fire?
Well, Madam Mayor and fellow councillors, I always believe that a good bylaw is a good bylaw that applies equally to urban and rural. And if we have to start making distinctions between living in the town of Meaford and living in the outlying area, then it's not really a good bylaw at all. So I'm going to say then for inside town and out in the rural area, the same rule for all our residents.
Okay, so that motion then from Councillor Bell is to remove the midnight clause for all fires, regardless of location. And is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Bartley, you'll second that motion? All right, any comment on that? Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and back to Matt. Matt, I do apologize for not calling you or any other staff because every time I call, I get 100% satisfaction. I spent 2 weeks searching bylaws, talking to people, made 50 phone calls, talked to firemen, talked to everybody, and I should have made one more call, and that was to somebody in staff, and I do apologize. I did let the mayor know it was actually late that I would be bringing this up, and I should have done more. I apologize. Now, just going back to what Councillor Bell has just brought up, is it staff's perception that we can have a bylaw that segregates urban and rural? I'm hesitant to do that, but.
So I would agree that in an ideal situation, we would not. However, there are clear differences between a 50-acre parcel and a 1/7 of an acre parcel. The zoning bylaw treats those sorts of properties extremely differently. We could say something about, that this applies to properties of over an acre, for instance. I have about an acre of clear land where I live. Sure, I could imagine that I could do something that wouldn't affect my neighbours in that. But in the 1/4 acre parcel that I used to live at, I definitely would be affecting my neighbours. So it's entirely possible, and we do this all the time. Like, we have a firearms and fireworks bylaw that distinguishes between settlement areas and non-settlement areas. We have a zoning bylaw that does the same. It's always possible. It's complicated. I will say right now that all of these motions, or whatever we end up doing today, we are not passing a bylaw today. You are giving us direction to go away and bring another bylaw back, because these sorts of changes I cannot do in a legal document on the fly.
Okay, thank you. Having said that, I would like to add a couple more. Do you want to just deal with one at a time then?
Yes, we have to deal with
Because-
one, and we'll approve or not approve one at a time. But the motion on the floor right now was to remove the midnight clause for all fires, regardless of location.
I would like
That's what
to,
you are going to second.
I would like to add an amendment to that, urban versus rural.
An amendment?
Sorry, can I just clarify? Not all fires, or I really
No,
hope
no.
not all fires. Outdoor fireplaces, fire pits, and chimneys.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I ask a question as well? What do we consider to be urban and rural? So in the Leith area, for example, where we have housing, would that be considered urban, or is that still rural, even though they have property under an acre?
I would encourage council to think about a size of parcel.
As opposed
But
to
also
urban and rural.
Urban, rural.
Yeah, and then also having the comment that there are, Meaford has some large properties within Meaford proper that are over an acre. I walk by them with my dog all the time and I'm quite jealous.
Okay, so you were going to offer an amendment to Councillor Bell's motion.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right,
So would we add the acre in? Can I have some discussion from,
you can put forward an amendment to that motion with regard to size.
correct?
So, Mr. Clerk, you got that amendment in there yet?
Kind of. So Councillor Bartley is proposing an amendment that would need a seconder
Yeah.
to Councillor Bell's already amendment. So
Correct,
this is as far as we're allowed to go with amendments. You can only do 2 of 2.
right.
To say that Councillor Bell wants to remove the time restriction for outdoor fireplaces, fire pits and chimeneas. And Councillor Bartley would like to add to that for parcels of over 1 acre.
Of over 1 acre.
Yes.
Okay. All right, is there a seconder for that motion, Councillor Vickers? Seconded. All right, we'll deal with, is there any discussion needed on this at this point? Councillor Bell?
I'd like to ask a question, Madam Mayor, to our clerk, because I would like to support fellow Councillor Bartley's amendment. I can support his amendment, but for my own, to call a vote on that, if it's easier, I could withdraw that one, if that makes things easier. But if it's included in Councillor Bartley's motion, my timing of the midnight removal and the 1 acre, then we can come back, I guess, and vote on what I said. So I'm looking to our clerk for make it easy. I know we've made it complicated.
I think because of the way this conversation has gone and they are different things and very different intentions, I would like council to vote on the amendment to the amendment. Then we'll vote on the amendment itself, whether revised or not. And then we'll do another amendment, and then I'm going to completely replace the motions on the main motion, but I'll do that in a way once I've got better direction from you.
That was my intention, to do it exactly that way, to vote on the amendment, to the amendment. All right. So are we ready to call a question? Do we need further discussion?
So if I can ask, what is the amendment? What are we voting
The-
on right now?
the
And I'll tell you whether I
amendment
want to
to-
talk to it.
The amendment to Councillor Bell's motion, or the amendment is for parcels of over 1 acre, to add that to Councillor Bell's motion to remove the midnight clause for outdoor fire pits, chimeneas, and so on. So Councillor Bartley's amendment to that is 4 parcels of over 1 acre.
So if I can ask for clarification, if you're less than 1 acre, what are your rules?
Midnight.
You would still have a midnight restriction
You would still have a midnight.
based
restriction.
on this amendment.
We need further clarification, or are we ready to call a question? Okay, I will call the question on the amendment to the amendment is for parcels over 1 acre. All in favor of that restriction? Then those against? And that is carried. Okay, so then go back to the amendment to the motion before us. I'll wait for our clerk to catch up there with the wording.
So then the amendment or the direction that you'd be providing is to remove the time restriction for outdoor fireplaces, fire pits and chimeneas for parcels of over 1 acre.
Okay, is everyone comfortable with that? Being no further question, discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor of this amendment going forward? And those against? And that is carried. Okay. Are there any further directions, Councillor Vickers?
I think, so as of right now, we still have the midnight on anything less than 1 acre. Am I correct?
Correct.
I would like to change, I would like to propose and make a motion to change that to 1 o'clock.
We couldn't do that before in the first amendment because we can only have two, one amendment and then an amendment to that. So, but
And
we
I
can
think they are
have,
pretty different things as well, because now it's parcels under 1 acre.
now it's, I'm sorry. It's
Because
a
now we're
parcel
talking about the
under,
parcel
under 1 acre.
so I think we do need them separately.
And if I, oh, I guess maybe we need, do we need a seconder?
Yes,
like
you
to
need
speak
a
to it.
seconder. That's your motion, a seconder, Councillor Kentner.
And my thought behind that is that we probably do need some restrictions, unfortunately, on people with less than 1 acre. And 12 seems a little bit early to me. And 1 maybe is a nice happy medium that hopefully everybody can live with. Quite often after 1 o'clock, I don't know about Mr. Bartley, my curb starts going down substantially after 1 o'clock on the on making good decisions, sort of thing, especially by campfires. So that's my reasoning. We probably do need some restrictions or some suggestions for the municipality, you know, for the town of Meaford, just because of close proximity and the amount of people that are in the town.
All right, so we have a mover and a seconder for another amendment to increase the time from midnight to 1 p.m., 1 a.m. To close down outdoor fire pits, chimneys, cooking areas, etc. And we have a mover and a seconder on that. Is there any further discussion or clarification needed for that? And no further discussion. Then I will call the question. All in favor of amending that to increase the time to 1 a.m. And those against? And that is carried. Councilor Bell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, fellow councillors and chief and clerk for helping us through this discussion this afternoon. I'm left though with one question. How are we going to educate? How is the message going to come out from this afternoon to our ratepayers during a burn permit? What's the basic plan for education and communication? Do we know that at this point?
I will pass that over to Chief and to Matt.
So we are working on a package with our communication department. We're coming out with a one pager on how to set up. There'll be a 1 pager on kind of the rules. The point is when you actually go in and get your permit, you will actually have to read what the rules are and actually check on them, indicating that you've read them. So that's going to be part of the education. That's why we're actually rolling the burn permit tool out, is actually so that we can make sure that we're getting the rules in front. Not just, yeah, I got a burn permit, I went down, I paid, I filled out the paperwork, so I'm good. The present, paperwork doesn't actually provide any information in regards to what your rules are. So this will actually force them to actually read each of the kind of defined rules and actually click on them, indicating that they've read them. So that'll be a big piece. And then we're also planning to put some items up on the municipal website as well.
Thank you.
This is definitely going to take time,
Yep.
and the plan is over the next year to year and a half, we'll continue to educate.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief, and to you, Matt, as well for working this through. And I just want to reiterate, it has always been our understanding that the role of our bylaw officer and the philosophy of our bylaw officer is to seek compliance in all aspects of bylaw enforcement. And I think with that, using a great deal of judgment, education, as has been Holly's philosophy going forward, is very, very much appreciated. That will contribute to the education of folks as well. And it's true, it's, it's nice to sit around a bonfire of an evening, especially in the summertime, when we can do that. Not so nice in the wintertime, but it is something in town, is really a challenge because of the seniors that we have, the age of our population, and the fact that noise travels at night, and smoke and irritants can also impact the quality of life that all of our citizens here enjoy. So good discussion, everyone. We appreciate the sensitivity to this, and we've reached a compromise and a move forward. So Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a couple more amendments before we close this off.
I'm not ready to close it off yet. That was just one
Oh,
point.
I thought you were going to put the gavel down and I couldn't speak again. Sorry. May I speak now then?
Go ahead.
And to the chief and to Matt, I realize that you're not going to be standing there at 12:01 or checking the wind meter. Steve Bartley is a law-abiding citizen. And if the bylaws say you can't do it, I don't do it. And I don't want to be in that. I don't want to be sitting at my fire pit looking over my shoulder for the bylaw officer at 12 because the law says so. I want to be a law-abiding citizen. So I want the bylaw to be a little more lax. One of them is my wife doesn't let me light a fire until the flag only shakes so far. I got a 4-foot flag not far from my fire pit, and I've watched it and I've registered, and I have to go to my phone to see what the wind is. And 35 kilometers is just stupid to light a fire. 10 is also, it very seldom gets to 10 or below. 17, 18 is acceptable to me. I think I'd like to move it to 20 kilometers per hour. 20 kilometers an hour is not very much wind. That's my opinion. And we're moving to the fire pit can only be 3 feet. 3'2" with a meter. That's a pretty small fire pit. I went around to several people and mine's 8 feet, so I can make it smaller. But I don't think 3 feet is the right thing. You go from 2.6 to 3 feet and then to 10. I would like it to be 5 foot maximum. Mine's got stones. You can't lift these stones. And then I know I'm just going on my fire pit, but I've went around to a lot of neighbors, talked to them a lot. I would never have a neighbor call you at 1 o'clock because they're likely sitting at my fire pit. So I would like to bring them 2 things in, that we change it to 20K and we have some conversation on it, and your expertise, please, chief, and that it's a 5 foot max fire pit. Thank you.
Okay, is there a seconder for that?
Can we do those two
Separately?
separately, Madam Mayor? Thank you, just for
I was hoping we
clarity.
could do it in one, but all right. The first one then is to move to a 20-kilometer wind velocity.
Correct.
A seconder for Councillor Vickers for that. Any questions on that? I will call a question. All in favor of that amendment? 2, 3, that is carried. All right, the second amendment is to have a 5 foot in diameter max for a fire pit. And that is from Councillor Bartley. Is there a seconder for that one? Councillor Bell.
Madam Mayor, could I ask the same question as I asked about time? Are we talking about that for all properties? Because again, a 5 foot fire pit in a small residential street is.
So that was going to be my comment as well, because the way we did the law was basically the distance is also the height. So in downtown Meaford, a 5 foot bonfire is a substantial fire. That's why we also thought about just picking the next permit that's a little bit higher up. There's no cost to permits. The only difference is if you're going to be having a 7 or 8 foot, you just call it in that you're having a burn. That way, a larger burn that's noticeable from the road, we're aware of it. It shows up on our app. I'm not sending, the cavalry at 11 o'clock. But I'm aware of it. That was the only comment that I would have in regards to that.
100% understand that. So usually my fire is not bigger than a 3-foot square, but it's in a pit, and two of my neighbors have the same pit, so you can get 20 people around the pit. And that's the size of it. So I would have to go on the website every time I go to light that and let you know.
Yep, you just basically going and saying it's, Saturday, we're gonna burn. You click a button, my map, I get a little burn icon that you're burning, a larger, a larger burn, in that case, more than the 3 feet. And then if anybody does happen to call in because it is a larger fire, they happen to be driving by, dispatch and myself will be fully aware that you have, said you're going to have a burn in that location, and we're not sending the cavalry.
Having said that, I still would like to stick to the 5 feet, but in the urban side are lots bigger than an acre.
Are you ready with the? wording on that
Yes.
one?
Did we already have a second, Madam Mayor?
We
I
do,
missed
yes.
that. Who was
Yeah.
it, please?
Councillor Bell.
Thank you. So that the bylaw be amended to change the size limit for fire pits to be increased to 5 foot in diameter for parcels of over 1 acre.
Correct.
And I do just want to put one concern forward again. There are properties within the town limits that are more than an acre, that are on St. Vincent Street, for example. 5 foot by 5 foot by 5 foot fire is a large fire.
Again, I'm just trying to cover my bases. I don't have a 5 foot by 5 foot by 5 foot fire, but the pit's that size, it may start that way. Yeah, but I'm just trying to have some leeway. I do not want to break the law.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. 5 foot diameter. This table is 5 feet.
6 feet.
That's your tape measure?
Some are
6 feet.
4 foot, some are 6 foot on the stage right now.
This one's 5.
6.
Anyway,
That's a big fire.
that's,
It's five blocks long, Carly.
that's, to me, a big fire, but to me, that's gonna get us back into, throwing in the old Chesterfield or maybe that old dilapidated, garden shed in the backyard that you really don't want anymore. So I think whether it's 5 or 6 or whatever, that's getting a bit too big.
Okay. Councillor Green, or Deputy Mayor, sorry.
Your worship, thank you. And just a clarification, if I may, from the chief. So the two smaller sizes, the 2 foot 6 and 3.2, whichever that is, did I hear you say that that fit into an existing permit process? That's why you've chosen those two particular measurements?
That's right. So there's five permits. One being a small chimney, because you don't need as much clearance because it's contained. A more of an open pit, but more meant for a backyard to get people completely sitting around. One that I just bought offline, by the way. Quite proud of. And then the next one is more of an open air burn where you've got some rocks around it. It's a larger pit. You may be doing it because you have people over and you want to have a larger fire in the backyard. Or you're starting to clear some wood. You don't have a large piece of property, but you've had an ice storms come through and you got a bunch of wood, you've broken it down and you want to clear it. That's what that one's meant for. The difference is that we're just asking that you call in or use the application just to specify that you're burning, so that if it does happen that someone does complain, and people do complain, instead of me sending, again, because of our dispatch system, I empty a hall. So if a fire comes in and says that there's a bushfire, I'm sending 5 trucks at $350 an hour plus personnel to go out and find out that, yeah, here you are burning the a 5 by 5, which is perfectly fine if that's what you agree it to be. But there is a certain piece where if you call it in, I get it on my application, dispatch calls me, we don't send out the cavalry. I just take a drive out and borrow a marshmallow.
I would add to that that the existing open burn bylaw says that no person shall set, maintain, or cause to be set or maintained fire in open air in excess of 1 cubic meter in size without a fire permit. 1 cubic meter, of course, being give or take 3'3" by 3'3" by 3'3". That's been in place since at least 2014.
Which means that you should be calling that in every time that you light it.
Councilor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just clarification. So if I had a bigger fire, 5-foot fire, I can get on the computer at Saturday night, 8 o'clock and send it in?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's no time limit on that?
Nope.
Don't need to speak to somebody?
Nope.
And having said that, I can see where a bigger fire would cause an issue in the urban area, even on a 1 acre lot. I'm going to withdraw my motion. And as long as it's going to be made so easy that I can just go on the computer and do that, done. I can abide by that rule.
And I think to add to that, Madam Mayor, is the permit itself is an annual permit. So January 1st, you can go on, get your permit for the year, and then the day you want to burn, you just hit the one button on the website. It's dead easy.
For all 5?
No. For the first 2, the smaller fires.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You go online, you get your permit, you never have to interact with the system until the following year. And that's just simply so that you check off on the rules to make sure that you know what they are and you're aware. It's the next level up is when you actually would call in and hit the button. And that would actually show up on a map for me, so I know what's burning within the municipality.
I can abide by that. Thank you.
So you're withdrawing your motion?
I am.
All right.
My
thank you.
seconder agrees to
Okay.
that.
And the seconder is in agreement with that. All right. Are there any further amendments to this recommendation going forward? Seeing none, then we have a motion, a mover and a seconder to approve this amended motion.
So, Madam Mayor, the wording that I've got, which I don't think we need a new mover and a seconder for,
No.
because you've kind of covered all of this, is that this is the motion that will appear in the minutes as the final motion. The Council of the Municipality of Meaford directs staff to bring forward an amended bylaw with the following changes. 1, that the bylaw be amended to remove the time restriction for outdoor fireplaces, fire pits and chimeneas for parcels of over 1 acre. 2, that the bylaw be amended to change the time restriction for outdoor fireplaces, fire pits and chimeneas to 1 AM for parcels of under 1 acre. And 3, that the bylaw be amended to amend the wind speed limit to 20 kilometers an hour.
That clear for everyone? I'll call the question. All in favor of this amended bylaw? And that is carried.
I also encourage that we have a nice coffee pot at the fire hall, so everybody's welcome to come by and have a coffee. If you have any questions, please call. You know, I'd love to talk about it or anything that is of issue. I'd rather work through it and work together. We're here to do this together, so I'd like to make sure we do that. I do have cream as well.
Baileys?
What about,
Yeah, no marshmallows though.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank
This
you.
is a good discussion and took some time, but I think we worked through that. We'll move on to 8.2 items for consideration on our agenda today. I'm noting that we have bylaw BIA Budget 2022 is listed first, but the second piece to that is the business improvement area discussion of the budget. So I'm suggesting that we put that one first. FIN 2022-02 is the recommendation that we approve the enacting the provisions in the 22 tax rates to raise the lower BIA levy cap to $357 for 2022, and to approve the provisions in the tax rates to raise the upper BIA levy cap to $595 for 2022. It seemed to me logical to put that forward first.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I disagree with the greatest respect. The budget is what sets how much money they need, and the cap therefore tells us how we're going to raise that money. So I think they are two pretty separate things, and I think the budget is appropriate to be dealt with first, and then to get direction to raise the caps appropriately when we bring forward the tax rate bylaw.
I stand corrected. All right, we'll move to bylaw 2022-14, the BIA budget for 2022. I move in a second to please put that on the table. Councillor Bell. And a seconder. Councillor Bartley. Any discussion on this? I'll call a question. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, moving on to FIN 2022, the business improvement area budget, specific to enacting the levy, lower the BIA levy cap and the upper BIA levy cap. Mover in a second to please put that on the table. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Vickers. Any comments, questions on that? All in favor? And any against? That is carried. Okay, moving on to bylaw 2022-15 as the debenture bylaw for the Thompson Street reconstruction. I have a mover and a seconder, please put that on the table. Councillor Vickers and Councillor Greenfield. Thank you. The recommendation is be it resolved that bylaw 2022-15 is to authorize the borrowing upon amortizing debentures in the principal amount of $1,296,037.84 towards the cost of the Thompson Street reconstruction, and that be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Any discussion on this? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just one question, if I may. Considering this, and I'll say basically it's 1.3 and our recent library debenture of 1.6. I'm just curious where that puts us now in terms of our debt capacity.
We're still through you, Madam Mayor, to Deputy Mayor. We're still okay, and there will be a report coming to give you what our loans and everything is probably within the next month or so. Okay, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Val. I'll look forward to that.
Okay. Any further questions? Councillor Bartley, Councillor Greenfield.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, this was approved 2 years ago, and I went back to 2 year ago budget, and it was going to debt 2 years ago. I'm just curious, the project was done a long time ago. Has the contractor been paid? Is this paying it here, or is this just putting the money where it belongs?
It was set up as an unfinanced for a little while, so now it's being paid.
Thank you.
Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a comment. I really appreciate, I think this is the first time I've ever seen the breakdown of the principal and the interest over the period of amortization, and some interesting numbers there, especially for the first few years where we kind of spin our wheels for a long time. But anyway, I do like to see this breakdown, and I think maybe members of our public would like to take a look at these numbers too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greenfield. Anything further? And I will call the question. All in favor of this recommendation moving forward? And that is carried. CAO 2022-13 is the purchase of a used backhoe. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Bell, Councillor Vickers. And the recommendation is that the Council of the Municipality of Meaford direct the Treasurer and Director of Financial Services to transfer $9,901 from the Fleet Reserve Fund to fund the additional cost for the purchase of a used backhoe. And 2, approve the purchase of that used 2013 CAT backhoe to be allocated for use by the Transportation and Fleet Services Division from Battlefield Equipment for $109,900.80. Any comments on that, Councillor Bell?
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, and to my fellow councillors and to staff that went looking for this piece of equipment. I'm going to tell you that this is a great find. When you take a look at the number of hours which are on the hour meter and how old the vehicle is at 9 years, it's an average of 266 hours a year. To put that into perspective, I put 200 hours on my tractor. That's doing snow blowing and some field work in the summertime. And for an industrial piece of equipment, having this amount of low hours, this is a really great find, and it will serve our municipality well for many years. The other thing is that also with an hour meter and working a piece of equipment steadily, having an hour meter, my fellow councillor Vickers can probably verify having 4,500, 6,000 hours on a piece of equipment of this age would be normal. And so again, I say it's a great find and I can support this. And we should not be afraid in any way, shape or form, because this was a piece of equipment which was rented out. When a corporation has a piece of equipment like this, it's always maintained really well. They can't turn around and rent it out to the next prospective renter and it not be in top-notch shape. So I really congratulate the folks that looked into finding this piece of equipment. I think it's a great piece of kit and I can support this.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Vickers and then Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship, and I beg for forgiveness for asking an operational question like this, but I do feel it's necessary, or I would like to anyway. This loader backhoe, by reading the report, Jess, we aren't trading the old one in. We're holding it until the new one comes, and then the old one is going on an auction type facility. My question is, why do we not just trade in the old one when we're buying the new one?
They don't take trade-ins.
So when I have a tractor and I go to buy a new one, quite often here's my old one. What are you going to give us for it? And then I just pay the difference. It seems like we're buying one completely and then putting the old one on the tender or the auction line sort of thing. It seems odd to me, but maybe that's the farmer in me.
Through you, Madam Chair. It's not odd at all, but it's a great question. So we've seen this a lot, even with our enterprise vehicles. Right now, anything going to auction is receiving very good return on its investment. And this is no different. We had estimated, if I remember correctly, it was $15,000 when we originally did the math on trading things in and not going this route. And now we've rejigged our estimate to about another $10,000 or $20,000 on top of that because of the way the auction atmosphere is at the moment. So it is definitely in our interest to go about getting rid of this piece of equipment in this way, but also we need another one before we can get rid of this one. Like, it's serving a purpose. We're holding on to what we have until we are able to actually physically get the new piece of equipment, and then we will let it go through the auction process.
Yeah, and thank you. I appreciate that the staff is trying to read the market and receive as much as we possibly can for the old backhoe. So I do thank staff for that. One other quick question: is the new backhoe much bigger than the old one in horsepower? Or are they pretty well like for size?
Essentially, sorry, through you, Madam Chair, they're essentially the same. Almost down to the point that it's also financially lucrative because we don't have to buy new pieces or new implements to use. So it's just 8 years younger or older.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Deputy Mayor, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. And Councillor Vickers essentially asked my question. I was just going to ask Jess about the value of the current unit and recognizing that used vehicles are really holding their value these days. So the question's been answered. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Bartley and then Councillor Green.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just, I'm probably overstepping my boundaries, Jess, but to Councillor Vickers, battlefield equipment does not take trade-ins.
Or do they not?
No, they rent equipment out. When the equipment gets sold, they don't take trade-ins.
And Councillor Greenfield.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Compass. Through you to Jessica, a couple of questions. What is the expected value for the trade-in, or not the trade, the sale of the 2006?
So through you, Madam Chair, we estimate that the sale of the existing unit will be approximately $25,000. So the one we have now.
Thank you for that. And how many hours usually per year do we put on the backhoe, Jessica? And asking that question, I'm just wondering, do we use it as often as we did, say, 5 years ago or 10 years ago? Do we use it more? Can you help me with that?
Oh, yes, through you, Madam Chair. I wish I had a better memory sometimes. So as part of our conversations about purchasing this unit through budget a few months ago, I had all that wonderful information that explained annually how many hours we put on the piece of equipment to prove that we were able to warrant purchasing this one. Off the top of my head, I honestly can't remember, but what I can say is that it's a 2006 and it has about 7,500 hours. So there's definitely years that we're going to use any piece of equipment more than others. There's, weather events and you name it that really factor into it. But we do use this piece of equipment all seasons and very extensively. So it is definitely beneficial for us to have it.
Yeah, thank you. Just one more quick one.
Please go ahead.
And this one's way out in left field. Does Enterprise lease backhoes?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's not a weird one. I think I've been asked if Enterprise leases everything, but they do not. They don't do anything larger than chassis vehicles, so like a 1-ton truck. So we can't even go to snow plows. I've been asked that question as well, but they do not do specialty equipment, no.
Good to know.
Anything further? Seeing no hands up, I will call the question. All in favor of this recommendation going forward? And that is carried. Next one is CAO 2022-14, the stop up and close portion of road allowance. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table? Councillor Greenfield, Councillor Bartley. And the recommendation is, and to create the bylaw to this effect, that to stop up and close the portion of road allowance between lot 34 and the broken front concession and lot 34 concession A be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Any comments, discussion on this? Oh, seeing none. I'll call a question. All in favor, this recommendation going forward? Carried. Moving on to CAO 2022-15 is the Nelson Street parking lot engineering services. I have a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Kentner and Deputy Mayor, thank you. And this recommendation reads that the council municipality authorize the treasurer and director of financial services to transfer $59,408 from the forecasted construction costs to fund the engineering design and construction administration costs for the 28 Nelson Street parking lot project. And number 2, approve the award of RFP INFTS 2022-01 provision of engineering services for 28 Nelson parking lot to WT Infrastructure Solutions for $97,407.72. And therefore then to enact the bylaw here, the award of tender. All questions or comments for this? Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm hoping staff can ease my nerves. We throw this out 97, that's $100,000 like it's nothing. I have a hard time believing it takes $97,000 worth of an engineering for a parking lot. Can you help me out with this? It baffles my mind.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, it is. I think, and you know what? I think a lot of us have done the same. So we did the parking lot last year on Trowbridge Street, which is substantially less. And I feel like a lot of us just compare those two, but they're very different. This one, we're essentially starting with anything to do with stormwater from scratch. So anything and everything to do with dealing with surface water or groundwater needs to be re-engineered and connected. And we also have potentially some soil issues here, knowing what the site was prior to what it is now. We are definitely having to deal with some underground potentially differences from this to what we had to do at, say, Trowbridge Street as an example. I think we had a bit of shock ourselves, to be honest, but we have been in communication with a few of our neighbors who are doing very similar projects and seeing very similar costing. So I'm not saying that makes it okay, but I think what we're trying to accomplish here, the requirements for all the underground work, let alone soil issues, I think this is kind of what we should expect.
So this doesn't cover if you find issues in there, that'll be over and above. And do we have a backup plan if we have to replace all the soil in that lot?
So through you, Madam Chair, this is just designing for the actual construction phase. We have to do geotechnical work, which will tell us exactly what's going on below surface. We're kind of in the middle of soil limbo. It's exciting. It sounds exciting. But we are in the midst of soil regulations changing, and that could potentially increase the cost. So in this particular ask, we're estimating about $25,000 just to deal with those soil regulations, which is above and beyond costs that we normally have to. So that was unusual for this year. If for some reason come the spring, which they've said they may no longer need those regulations, so that they've proposed that they're put off another year. So if that happens, that additional money won't be required. But right now, the government is looking at it as if it's happening, so we have to budget for it in case it does go through. So that unfortunately is not unexpected, expected cost, but it's a decent amount of money.
Yeah, I understand it, but $97,000 is a full-time wage for a whole year. It's going to take a consultant a whole year to design and look after a parking lot. That's my question.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, the answer to that is yes. We aren't just designing the surface, right? So we're not just taking a gravel space and laying asphalt over top of it. We have to excavate, we have to deal with water, storm water. And that also includes, we're asking them to look at things that we may not choose to include as part of the construction because they are cost prohibitive. But I think we need to start looking in the direction of low impact development, whether that is something that we want to include or not. But those types of things is the design for sure.
Thank you. And I do apologize. I know I'm shooting the messenger. I do apologize.
I think, Madam Mayor, if I can just jump
Excuse
in
me,
there.
I'm going to go to our CIO first.
Actually, I was just going to, same comments that Jessica had. As per council's request, we are looking at low impact design elements and also looking at a car charger, which is going to require electrical services into it. So there's another item that another parking lot wouldn't have as well. So there are quite a few features that we do want to look at in this parking lot to deal with climate change. Just to expand on the environmental thing, it's something that applies to all of our projects. So we had to lift up budgeting in our bridges project because of this new environmental reporting when you take soils off site and taking it to not your property, there's a lot of reporting and testing that you have to do in relation to that. So it's not just this project, it's all our projects that impacts. Hopefully, potentially there's that legislation to delay it that we've just become aware of. It's actually on the environmental registry right now for comment to delay it. It's in place now, but could be delayed. So we're just waiting to see the impacts of that.
And so
Thank you. Did you have further?
through you, Madam Chair, yeah,
Please go
Rob,
ahead.
thanks so much. In perspective, even that piece of legislation for the construction component of this project was an additional $50,000 just to deal with that part. So like, unfortunately for everyone all through the province, we've all had to figure out how to incur those costs for that type of work.
Thank you. And Councillor Vickers, I think you were next.
Yep. Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, my comment is kind of about the same sort of line sort of thing. Like, it's great to have these ultra modern parking lots with chargers and to have a ground that's that allows the water to run down through it instead of out to the wastewater, and it'll be greener and it'll be better for the environment. But the harsh reality on us is that we have to figure out how to pay for it. The reason why you pave them over block, you slope them down to a drain and get the water out of there, they're cheap and easy. And any of these new types of parking lots that people are requesting, I've read it on Facebook myself that this is what we need to become a modern community. There is a cost to it, and our dollars will not go as far as what they once were. We took Gillies Bridge. It took us 2 years. Where, back, the bridge before, it was in a 1 year budget. We could afford it in a 1 year budget. And now we're into 2 years budgeting to get one bridge. This parking lot is kind of in the same sort of a spot. If we want all these modern green initiatives, that's fine, but they do come at a cost, and it's concerning to myself.
Understood. Councillor Greenfield, and then
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I guess either to Rob or Jessica. I guess the first thing that jumped out to me reading this report was the scoring, the number. We had two applicants that came in with scores in the mid-60s, and WT Infrastructure came in at 73. Now, I've become more accustomed to reading scores for consultants, engineers that are putting forward prices to do work in our municipality being 82, 83, 85. I looked at WT's website. They're out of Guelph, relatively local. They've done, on the website, it says they've revitalized, they've rebuilt parking lots, but I didn't see anything about them designing and building a parking lot from scratch. This is a great site for a parking lot. I'm not going to deny that. I wish we could somehow remove this site, set it aside, and bring another one in. Mainly because I do fear more problems in the future. But I'm asking Jessica and Mr. Armstrong, are you confident with this company? As I say, I'm just not blown away by the score they got. And if there are problems, underground problems there, which I hope there aren't in the future, are they going to be qualified to solve the problems, give us a good parking lot at a decent price, a price that's affordable to the people of this municipality? So that's the question I'm asking, and I like to hear your answer.
okay, Jess, who wants to take that one? Jess or Mr. CAO?
He's still wearing a mask, so I'll go. Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, fair enough. I feel like we've had this conversation a couple times over new contractors coming into our neck of the woods. We also have obviously done reference checks on the company, so we wouldn't feel uncomfortable if we're at this point asking to reward it. With that said, we also did a bit of our own due diligence, and we know that our neighbors in the Blue Mountains have utilized this contractor previously, and it was a very similar project to this one. So I believe it was last year, and they're actually proceeding to do a road reconstruction with them this coming year. So obviously they must have been happy enough with them that they're moving forward with work again. They had nothing but good things to say. And again, I think it was key for us that the work was very similar, like a more downtownish location that potentially had underground issues. It was very much the same to what we are currently dealing with. So to answer your question, sorry, in a roundabout way, yes, we do feel comfortable, and we have no reason to not at this point.
Thanks, Jess. No, nothing from you.
Could I
Please go
have
ahead
one
with the second.
follow up with
rebuttal.
Jessica? The parking lot down in the Big Blue. For 70 years prior, did it have an old service station built on it before?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't exactly know the historical use behind it. But I feel like the understanding of the project was that it did have past historical uses that could equal challenges with soil. What that is, I don't know. But they are designing probably a greener parking lot than we're looking at, with more challenges to come from that side of things as well. So the design might be even more complicated than what we're looking at implementing. So I feel like we're in a good place to trust that, well, we have to trust that they are able to fulfill our requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Kentner is next.
Thank you. And through your worship, a question to, I guess, Jessica or Rob. It sounds like we're reaching a point where maybe the cost in relation to the number of cars we'll be able to park on this lot may be a problem. And so can you tell me, first of all, how many cars the lot will accommodate?
Through you, Madam Chair, we haven't designed the parking lot yet, so I'm not exactly sure at what the capacity would be. That's what we will find out through this process.
But surely we know how big this lot is in relation to the Trowbridge Street lot, which was just done, and all we have to do is compare the ratios, and we should have an estimate of how many cars.
Well, through you, Madam Chair, I think it all depends on what the design looks like, how much potentially, if we do move forward with things like low impact design, if we have any sort of landscape strip, if there's anything that deducts from the overall parking space, what the stormwater outlets might look like. Like, I don't know any of that. So I feel like those things all could really play into the design of the size. So
thank you. And that sort of tells me then that in fact, we may not be able to park enough cars for the kind of costs we're building into this. So Rob, I know you want to speak, and I've got one more question after that.
Sure, Mayor.
Over to you, Rob.
To council, when we purchased the land and identified it for a parking lot, the report estimated the number of parking spots. I just don't have that handy right now and have to go back and check that, but we did provide some estimates. I'm thinking 80 spots was the estimated. That is just coming to the top of my head, but I can't guarantee that. I'd need to check it.
So may I just ask a follow-up question? Is any thought, like, is it practical in any way, shape, or form to look maybe putting us off a bit, but perhaps having a two-floor garage? That is, you know, one below ground, one at ground, or one at ground and one above?
Over to you, Rob.
The worship, I would suggest that a tiered parking system. I know that people have looked at it for their own developments, and the cost of that would be significant. The cost per parking space would probably quadruple in relation to cost to provide a tiered parking system versus just a surface parking system, because you're still gonna have all your stormwater requirements and everything. So I think that's to be known on a longer term basis.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, over to you, Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Bartley.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'm enjoying this discussion. A couple of questions for Jessica, who I can hardly see. First of all, recognizing that in 2030, I believe they won't be producing gas engines anymore, and there will be a lot more electric vehicles. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts on how we see that change being implemented. Do we see gas stations having chargers? Do we see companies like Tesla or Honda or whomever coming into communities and installing chargers? At this point in time, do we have any idea what that may look like before we make that kind of investment?
So through you, Madam Chair, that's a great question that I think everyone is currently grappling with. We have been fortunate enough to have had a car charger donated to the municipality, which the installation will be in this parking lot. So as much as we don't have to pay for the car charger, we do have to deal with the electrical that gets put in so that it works. So I think we're very fortunate that that has happened. We've started to see them though in a lot of municipalities pop up, often sponsored by, like, say, Tesla, or they're really looking at the heavier commuter travel like 26 and places to try to not leave people who have electric vehicles kind of in a void if they're away on vacation or whatever the case might be. I'm actually taking part in my first electric vehicle seminar in the next couple of weeks. So like that's a show that times are changing, that's something that people are really starting to push, those of us who are involved in the transportation world. So I think it's slowly evolving, but I don't know that anyone has any wonderful answers at the moment, other than the fact that we've definitely, especially with tourism, we're seeing a lot of people come to our areas who do have vehicles who need charging. So I think everyone's trying to identify the best way to deal with that.
A second question, if I may, Your Worship.
Supplementary, please. Go ahead.
I'm also wondering, Jessica, if we think there's any potential for any grant, should we choose to do something innovative such as a low impact surface, or if we it does turn out to be a brownfield or anything of that nature, do you think there's any potential of securing some funds to help us?
Through you, Madam Chair, I feel like our team always does a great job at trying to find any opportunity for grants, whether it be, like you say, brownfields or green energy, you name it. I know that we're always looking for opportunities. So I can't say for sure what that might look like, but yes, definitely, if it's out there, we've definitely looked at it or tried to apply for it, and we'll continue to do so.
Thank you, Jess. And Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have two quick questions. Jessica, would there be revenue generated from a electrical car charging thing on this parking lot? Would we get that revenue, or would the company owning the thing?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's a wonderful question. My understanding is that it's installed and you are welcome to use it as a resident. I don't think that there's a user pay option.
Oh, for sure. You have to put your charge card in to use them.
Okay.
Yeah. And truthfully, I strongly believe we need the parking lot. Parking is at a very premium in downtown Meaford, and I don't think one charging unit will be enough. But I was curious because we'll be billed for the hydro, or somebody will be. But anyways, we should look at that. My question would be on the process to pick the proponent. So they scored 73. The next one scored 67. Do we get a chance to look at their quote on the 67? Was it close? Was it higher? Was it a whole bunch lower? Can that be stated?
So the quote is part of that score,
That-
because
that-
as long as they get over a certain level, then we open the quote, but the quote is normally 10 to 20% of it. I did want to sort of just mention to yours and Councillor Greenfield's point, we have actually been trying to amend how we're scoring slightly. On all of our guidance we give to staff, it says 7 to 8 is meets requirements, and 9 to 10 is like offers us something way beyond what we've asked for, but included in a price. So you shouldn't be seeing 90s, because generally companies aren't going to give us a whole bunch of things for free. Like a 70 is a very good meets all the things that we've asked for.
So number two, would it be close in the same price? Can you ease us on that one?
Almost certainly, yes.
Okay,
If it was a huge difference, it would have swung it much closer.
wouldn't be half price.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Hey, Councillor, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Bishop. Just one final quick question for, I think, Mr. Armstrong. Do we, at this point in time, thinking of the timeline for this project, and I know it has to be extended, but do we have any sense at all of how much longer we may have access to the Canadian Tire parking lot?
Not absolutely. I would note that probably our desire to continue to maintain that lot is becoming limited due to some challenges of the surface of that. So I think, if anything, I think we have an interest of walking away from maintaining that once this new one's built because of concerns over maintenance of and the quality of that parking lot.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything further before I call a question? I'm seeing none. So I will call the question. All in favor of approving this award to WT and Infrastructure? Those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. We'll just go through this next one and then take a quick break. Bylaw 2022-17 is a site plan agreement and an H1 removal for 157 Kiwanis Beach. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table? Councillor Greenfield, Councillor Bartley, thank you. The recommendation is that this will be a bylaw to authorize the execution of a site plan control agreement. Bylaw number 60-2009 of the municipality of Meaford, and that be taken as read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed. Comments, questions of staff on this? Housekeeping issue usually. Seeing none, all in favor of this motion going forward, and that is carried. All right, we have been sitting for a long time. Good discussion on everything. It is 3:13 by my clock. We'll take a 5-minute break and stretch. Come back at 3:18. back, everyone.
Thank you.
We are down to point 9 on our agenda, the committee of the whole. And I will entertain a motion to move into committee of the whole. Deputy Mayor, thank you. Councillor Kentner, all in favor? Carried. First item on our committee of the whole is DB 2022-05 is a consent agreement. I have a mover and a seconder to put that on the table, please. Councillor Vickers and a seconder, Councillor Bell, thank you. And the recommendation reads that the committee of the whole recommend to council that the council of municipality Meaford enact a bylaw to authorize a consent agreement pertaining to 63446 Sunny Valley Road. And we have a mover and a seconder for that motion, and I'll ask for comments, questions, Councillor Kentner and then Councillor Vickers.
Who's first?
Councillor Kentner.
Okay. I thought that's what I heard.
Councillor Kentner is first.
I just, it was to put it on the floor, was it not?
No, this was
They're ready to say, okay, I have no questions on this, I know.
you have no questions. All right, Councillor Vickers, you're on.
Right.
Well, I have a question. Thank you, Your Worship. So my question is this the reason why we're allowing lots? And I know it's done through the Committee of Adjustment, but is it because it's under the rural designation as opposed to agriculture?
Through your worship, yes, we I recall we've had this conversation before. There are different restrictions under agriculture. I mean, you can still create lots, but for all intents and purposes, they are extremely large compared to this. I believe it's 100 acres or something close to that. That is the minimum requirement, but it is because of this land use designation that does allow it for these obviously relatively much smaller lots than you would have in agricultural lands.
And if I can make just a comment, and I know we can't do anything about it, that it's designated rural, and this is why I think we need to look at what we have designated rural in the rural settings as opposed to agriculture, because this is basically 100 acre. We're allowing 3 building lots to happen on it. 2.13 hectares is the one size, 1.22. It's great. I guess it'll add more lots, but it also takes another 5 acres out of cropland production. If you look at the map, it's not a bush, it's a field. I haven't drove by it. I don't know exactly where it is, but it does look pretty agriculture. And I'll maybe just, harp on this a little bit more. We sometimes think, well, we're losing 175 acres a day of agriculture land to urban development. And we're adding another 5 acres of that 175 acres. So once you start really looking at it and thinking about it, how many different ways we lose rural agriculture land to urban development continues to happen. And I guess I know we have no right to stop it. It's the way it's going to be, but it does cause me a lot of concern. Thank you.
Good point. And Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was going to ask through you to Mr. Voigt if I was reading this map correctly and coming to the conclusion that these lots are now workable land, and I think I'm correct in assuming that they have been under cultivation. Just follow up to what Councillor Vickers was talking about. I know this partially came to us because Grace Alva Conservation had concern about endangered species perhaps being in the fields, and I'm on Grace Alva. I can't deny that. That's an important factor in today's world. But frankly, I'm going to vote against this this request. Primarily because we're in, well, the early stages, moving on hopefully towards the middle stages of an official plan review. And it's items like this. It's severances in the rural area. Yeah, be great. Great on the 5-acre plot, the 3-acre plot. It'd be great to have a nice new house and a garage and a septic service, but what does that do to the agricultural potential of this overall lot? To me, this is the type of thing we need to be discussing in our official plan review. And to be making decisions like this at this hour, I don't think this is, I think it's poor timing. I don't think this is the time that's appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greenfield. Anything, Councillor Bell?
Thanks, Madam
Sorry,
Mayor.
Rob, excuse me, Councillor Bell, I saw Rob's hand up just the last minute there.
Just a few technicalities. So legally, the municipality must review and consider consents. Our Committee of Adjustment must review and consider consents based on the approved policy at the date that it's being considered. So these 2 lots were considered by the committee and recommended by planning staff to comply with our official plan, which was in place at the time. And they granted that approval based on those recommendations. So absolutely. And then I was going to kick it over to the comments from Councillor Vickers that right now, the provincial, we start with the provincial policy. It speaks to agricultural land. Prime agricultural land needs to be protected. Then we go to the county official plan, and actually interesting in the county official plan, they just became more flexible to rural lands. They added another lot capacity. As we go through our official plan policies and bring those to council for consideration, that's the time to consider it based on future potential severances, and we can be more restrictive. That can be part of the public process and can be considered as part of the official plan review. But these applications needed to be reviewed against the current approved policies. We talked about the LPAT. If council doesn't approve something and there's an appeal, the LPAT's only going to be looking at your current approved policies and going to say they permit them, and we're back. So I just wanted to put those 2 comments together in perspective to which we're considering at this point.
And delaying consideration of this at the council level would not constitute that. It has to be the date of application.
That's correct. And the only other thing I guess I could ask is if council doesn't approve, this is only a condition of the consent. The consents have already been approved by the committee. If the committee doesn't, or council doesn't approve this agreement, then we can work with the Conservation Authority and find another way to implement the condition that doesn't require council to approve this agreement. This is only to put people on notice of the bottleneck. That's the sole purpose of this agreement of future people. The lots have already been
Consent's been given.
It's been given by Committee of Adjustment.
Thank you for that, Rob. Okay, Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. My question is about the bobolink and about what we're doing in our current day and age. And I know I've got 2 members that sit on Gray Sobble. So when you read through this, when someone wishes to do the development, they're restricted that they can't do a site alteration. I think I wrote down April 11th through August the 15th. So how does that work consistently, or is it just specific areas that when an application comes in, Gray Sobble may put that comment in their application? Or is this a standard? When you go to do it, Gray Sobble's going to say what they've said in this application?
Through your worship, it is standard in the sense that when you're dealing with lands that either contain whatever that environmental area that's being protected or the species or adjacent contiguous to it. So it's common, but if that's not the case, then then there would not be that comment. It's not a blanket comment they put on everything. And I will note that with a careful reading of the comments that we received from the Conservation Authority, they're clearly stating that there is no impact as such, that they see that it complies, that these are just added requests, as I think Rob had characterized it as well, as reminders that there are these restrictions when they move forward, right? So that is that they still need to follow those provisions. But they're noting that the bigger property, for example, has significant woodlands on there, but not the areas that are being severed, right? So it's really a proactive measure to put it on title so that there can be no errors in the future.
Okay.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just throw my 2 cents worth in here. This piece of property is a driver and a wedge shot from my house. I've never seen a bobolink on the property. It has never been worked up. It is a field. You could use it for agriculture. It has not been worked up in 20 years. Actually, that field burnt 2 years ago. The fire chief was here. They were there looking after it 2 years ago. It was burnt. I have serious questions about the owner of the property, but this application ticks all the boxes. And as a counselor, I can't go against any of them because it ticks all the boxes. So I would have to support this application. Thank you.
Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question to our 2 members of the Conservation Authority. Is it like this issue, which we've heard about for decades, of the loss of agricultural land, is that totally out of the purview of the Conservation Authorities, that issue? And do you never have discussions at the conservation area based on the this is good agricultural land and this is the wrong use of it? Or
I would say no, like that's not part of the Conservation Authority, and maybe Rob or Harley can help me out. I may be sticking my foot in my mouth, but no, that's not part of it. They look at it through the lens of the bobolink and the habitat area sort of thing, right? Like they don't really care about the agriculture. They probably care about it, although they seem to like planting a lot of trees on agriculture land. But I don't think they really have any say like that. That's in an official plan. So Rob's bang on with what he said, and I've taken my lesson. I've learned my lesson from you after the McIntosh property. So hopefully we're gaining traction. We've talked about it, and hopefully come the official plan that we can maybe do something different here in the municipality of Meaford. So that's what I'm hoping for. And I appreciate the time allowing me to speak to it.
Thank you for that.
just from my standpoint, I came here in 1956, and I am here to tell you that there's a lot more forest in Grey County than there was then, because many farms have gone out of production. And I think part of the problem is, in fact, that, it's like fighting the inevitable. People are just not going into farming, and they're not farming land such as this that has to be, sort of pioneered. So I have trouble understanding. I totally understand we don't want to end up like the Niagara Peninsula, but at the same time, I don't see a lot of pressure to really preserve farmland as we ought to. And and it surprises me that the Conservation Authority, which puts all this emphasis on the proper use of property, skirts, what is, to all of us, a very important thing, where our food comes from. So thank you.
Okay, good conversation. Anything further?
Rob.
Sorry, Rob.
Just through your worship, to expand on the role of the Conservation Authority, they have 2 key roles as it relates to commenting on land use. One is to deal with matters of natural hazard, so advising on areas of flooding and erosion. And then the other is matters of natural heritage. So those are environmental aspects. So protected woodlots, protected species, So those are their two roles. They don't provide land use planning comments. That's actually the role of the Minister of Agriculture and Food through the county in providing protection of agriculture and how you should be doing that. So just to clarify, that's the Conservation Authority's key role.
Thanks for that clarification, Rob. All right, seeing no further comments, I will call a question. All in favor of this recommendation going forward? And those against, one, and that is carried. Moving on to INF 2022-02 is the DWQMS Management Review and Audit Reports. I have a mover and a seconder. Put that on the table. Councillor Bartley, thank you. And Councillor Kentner, thanks. And this motion is to, recommendation is to, that the Committee of the Whole receive this report for information purposes. Comments, questions on this? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did have one question. Within the SAI report on page 5, there are 4 recommendations, elements 4, 5, 8, and 21. And I want to ask about element 4, where it suggests identifying a member of top management to be designated the backup QMS rep. And I'm just curious if we need to do that, or is that covered off in our emergency management? Markey?
Through you, Madam Chair, great question. And I'm going to take this opportunity for those of you who haven't met Emily. Emily is our wonderful environmental services coordinator who does such a great job at taking care of all of our drinking water and writing this wonderful report. So I'm going to hand it over to her.
Welcome, Emily.
For your worship, I believe the SAI recommendation was to authorize that top management could designate a replacement or a backup. With that followed our internal auditor, who also then recommended that we actually stipulate who a backup QMS rep would be in the event that I was not able to do my role. During our management review meeting, we designated that the current wastewater foreman would be the backup QMS rep.
Thank you, Emily.
And thank you for this great report, Emily. I had a sneak preview, but well done. Thank you for that. Any further questions, Councillor? I have done.
They're very in-depth and so on, and it's good, 100% good that council gets to see this. I have a question on the process and the protocols that are in place. And I've got a page up here of our package, page 238. And it's an incident of regulatory non-compliance. Now that's a big heavy duty heading for an incident of having low chlorine out in the Leith area, and the notification to Owen Sound. And I mean, I can read this, but maybe just some comments on the protocols that are in place when something like this. It didn't say you had 0 chlorine, it was low chlorine. And there's a regulation requirement obviously on it. So just the protocols that are in place on that.
Through your worship, yes, there was actually low chlorine, and a low chlorine in a distribution is anything less than 0.05. So essentially it is a 0. With that, the on-call operator receives alarms, and then the person that was on call at the time then responds to the location of the alarm. So they went out to Leith, and as well, since we could receive our water from Owen Sound, we also contacted them. So we were flushing on both sides of the boundary at that time. Owen Sound did not receive the low chlorine on their side. But we essentially flushed until the water was back up to a reasonable value. And then we documented and called the ministry.
So thank you.
Go ahead.
So when a monitor goes off and it says that there's a low chlorine count, so and you say you flush it by opening up a hydrant, does chlorine just dissipate, or why does the flushing actually increase the flow? Why is chlorine just not simply stay in water?
Through your worship. So we found out more following the event, if you want to call it, that Owen Sound had had issues the weekend prior to us getting this low chlorine. They have since changed their procedures that if they have future issues that they will let us know so we can be better prepared. But yes, chlorine does dissipate. From what we gathered, they were maybe not putting out as high as they would normally, which is then again, because we're out on the end of their system, we received a low chlorine. That's again too, if you want to look at it in Meaford too, we have a lot of flushers and stuff at the ends of our system, so that the people at the ends of the system have just as good of chlorine as the rest of the system.
Okay. I'm not seeing any more. Yes, I am. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And this is a pretty short question. I get a glass of water every time I come to the hall here. I fill it up in downstairs and you can't see through the water. It's all white cloud. And by the time I get up the stairs, which is taking longer and longer every time, it's gone. What is that?
Through your worship, that's just air.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
Sparkly water. Thank you, Emily.
Sorry, I had to ask.
The meeting's getting on. All right. Seeing no further questions, I'll call the question. All in favor of receiving this report for information? Again, well done. Thank you for that. And we'll move on now to updates from local members and begin again with our deputy mayor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And I'll just start by thanking Councillor Vickers. I was going to speak to that here when I got to my county report. I was also in touch with Don Nod and learned that generally he sells the bags at $90 for 15, which is the $6 that you spoke to. And he suggested that larger operations might need to pick up every 2 or 3 weeks, where some might, go 2 or 3 times a year. So totally depending on the size of the operation, as you know. Anyway, County Council did meet last Thursday morning, again in a hybrid manner, and this is working quite successfully. Our plexiglass dividers have been removed and masks are now optional. The chambers felt wonderfully normal. The first discussion regarded the long-term care redevelopment task force minutes. The recommendation to council was to approve their desire to go forward with option 2, which includes the construction of Rockwood Terrace long-term care home, 128 beds, the village square at 20,000 square feet of retail and commercial space, and the assisted living facility, which is 60 units over 2 floors. The county has committed to completing the reconstruction of Rockwood Terrace by 2025 to meet provincial requirements for accessibility. The cost for this project is a whopping $108.5 million. Later on, the full campus of care can be completed by adding the additional proposed 60 units of market rent and affordable seniors apartments. The intention is to offset the debenture by selling the existing facility, excess land on the site, and hopefully additional grants from the province. In a recorded vote, council supported this request 77-13. County staff brought the promised report outlining their concerns in moving forward with the TPM motion from the prior meeting, suggesting that supplemental taxation gleaned from unanticipated growth be returned to the lower tiers via CIP funding. Staff shared that this additional funding is needed by the county to offset unforeseen budget pressures and to allow council the opportunity to fund projects throughout the year, such as we did in 2021 by allocating 1% of the budget to affordable housing. With this understanding, council reversed their prior decision on Councillor Weber's motion. Council heard a delegation from Al Leach, Children's Safety Village. This facility teaches kids how to be safe during emergency situations. Council will discuss a grant to the village at our next session. The updated parking bylaw was presented to council. Impacting Meaford are 2 changes. The first one, vehicles stopping on Gray Road 7 to let students off for school from the west side of the road are causing safety concerns. A no stopping zone was requested by the school and the municipality. The new no stopping, no parking zone will be 175 meters south of the Highway 26 intersection to 450 meters south of the intersection. Residents living on Gray Road 12 near the 7th line raised concerns with the speed limit. The speed jumps from 50 to 80, leaving Meaford. There have been multiple incidents of vehicles accelerating as soon as they hit the speed change and passing stopped school buses picking up children. It was recommended to extend the 50-kilometer-hour zone west past the 7th line to clear the residential area, and that was approved. The Homelessness Prevention Program, formerly known as CHIPPY, has seen a modest increase of funding of $157,297, giving the county $2,045,600 to work with to support sustainable housing benefits, emergency shelters, services and supports such as safe and sound drop-in centers. This funding assists Meaford Place and 4 other residences across the county for people at risk of homelessness. Savannah Myers delivered a county CIP, Community Improvement Plan update. Since 2020, financial supports have been provided to lower tiers to give us the tools to grow our assessment base, assist with becoming more investment ready, and to accelerate priority development such as affordable housing projects. The total value of this support has led to a total public and private investment of $2,241,470.50. And that's it for my update, Your Worship.
Thank you. Okay, and so for the first time, we have a report from the Wellbeing Advisory Committee, which met on March 23rd for the first time since this committee had been formed. And we began with introductions all around and welcoming our community partners who are part of this Health and Wellness Advisory Committee. Sitting in for our clerk, Matt Smith, who is our staff liaison for this committee, Margaret provided a brief outline regarding the role of the advisory committee and an overview of the well-being plan. She identified 10 suggested priorities for this committee's consideration for implementation in 2022. And it's interesting to note that 3 of the 30 identified tasks within the plan have already been accomplished. And the committee was happy to approve the staff suggestions, noting that the importance of an annual health and wellness survey, especially following these last 2 years of uncertainty and social isolation, to monitor any changes to the base data that was collected in the initial survey responses that began the plan deliberations. Understanding the specific risks to community, to safety, health, and wellness within the broad, diverse population in our geographically large community was a key reason for establishing our own community health, safety, and wellness plan. We also reviewed the OP plan going forward from Director Rob Voigt, and there was much discussion on that going forward as well. We also received a report from the OPP, Grey Bruce Detachment for March 2022, and that is included in our package this afternoon. Inspector Deborah Anderson provided an overview of the report, highlighting areas relating to calls for service, and offered an overview of the social media channels and note of the change to the criminal record check process, and shared information on a new program for the OPP relating to mental health, and suggested that changes were coming to the area based on results from the service delivery review. And that is my report for that committee, and I'll ask if there are any others. Councillor Greenfield.
Thanks again, Your Worship. Grace Oval Conservation Authority did meet last Wednesday afternoon. Bit of a first for our meeting. It was a hybrid meeting. If you remember last Wednesday, we were hit by some freezing rain. 4 of our members chose to attend virtually, and 6 other brave souls attended in person. And Another bit of a novelty, we were at the Grey County building for a meeting. One main topic on the agenda that I will mention, and it's may have some ripple down effects to the various municipalities in the area. Watson and Associates did a study for the Conservation Authority concerning our basically our permit fees and the costs of providing them. Where were we as far as recouping our efforts that we're putting into our planning studies? And they found a couple of very interesting things. One was that we are Grace Harbor was basically not getting enough for their planning activities. So we're likely coming in at about a half of what we really need to cover the costs of giving our planning statements. That was interesting. The other interesting part was that we at Grace Harbor will definitely need 3 more people to be involved in the planning process. We now currently have 4 full-time planners, for lack of a little longer title for them. That would increase our numbers to 7. So the decision was made to go public, ask for public comments on the Watson report, on the numbers that they had come up with that would be necessary to cover the costs of our efforts. Some of the increases were fairly astronomical. Some were fairly minor. Again, this is just a report. If there's any good news out of it, financially, it may mean that the levies that the municipalities have been paying may come down somewhat in the future. That's the theory, which would likely be welcomed by Ms. Manning and our Treasury Department. But anyway, it was a pretty informative document that Watson came up with, and it's as I say, it's going to be distributed. I expect our planning department will take a look at it and maybe make comments on it, because it's an eye opener, and I have always maintained that if you use a service, you should pay for it. And if the Conservation Authority is not recouping sufficient funding, well, we need to go after it. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any further comments? No, anybody else? And seeing none, I will entertain a motion to move out of committee of the whole, please. Councillor Bell, Councillor Greenfield, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. We're moving out of committee of the whole at 3:53. Are there any notices of motion coming forward? Councillor Vickers.
Yes, I'd like to bring forward a notice of motion to ask staff to bring forward a report concerning their thoughts on the Ontario Land Tribunal.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Seeing none, we'll move on to 10.2, motions for decision. One put forward by Deputy Mayor Shirley Keaveney, memorandum of understanding with the Meaford Chamber of Commerce. I would imagine, Deputy Mayor, you will put that on the floor.
I would be delighted.
Thank you. And is there a seconder for that, Councillor Bell? And I will pass it over to you.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And I won't read the entire motion, but just for anyone listening, the gist of it is that through the final paragraph, be it resolved that Council of the Municipality of Meaford hereby directs staff to bring forward a report with an updated memorandum of understanding that includes an expiry date, a cost of living increase, source of additional funding, and other pertinent matters that staff consider necessary for the operation of the Big Apple. And I just wanted to make a couple of points in relation to this. During the last term of council, this would go back to about early 2018, the Economic Development Committee had a sub-working group that looked at visitor information. And there were a group of us that went around to neighboring communities, and we learned that every one of them had an office of some description where visitor information was delivered by a live person. At that point in time, our Apple was not open, it was not operating. And those of you who were here may remember the report coming to council at that point in time. And from there, the Big Apple did get reopened. So we realized that people, as much as we think they all rely on these for information, people do still like to ask somebody, where is the best place to eat? You know, they want to know what is kind of, you know, the best of the best, whether it's an Airbnb they're looking for, they want to get recommendations from an individual. So I also wanted to share some stats from the Big Apple. In 2020, total visits were 13,313. They were a little off in 2021 because of, you know, restrictions, and because we know through the, we've talked about this before, the Grey County Environics data, that tourism in general in our local area was a little bit off last year. But I do think with restrictions lifted that we will see a lot of people traveling again this summer, and that the Apple will be a very busy spot. So I would just like to ask all of my fellow councillors to please consider supporting this motion so that we can help the Apple deliver the great service that it does.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any comments, questions? No? All right, then I will call the question. All in favor of this motion going forward, and that is carried. Moving on to number 11 on the agenda, the adoption of the minutes for a council meeting March the 14th. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Bartley, Councillor Greenfield. Comments or questions on this? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. And the closed meeting for March the 14th as well. A mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Vickers. Is there a need to go into closed session for this? Seeing none, I will call a question. All in favor? And that is carried. Okay, moving on to the communications file. Is there anything that anyone on council, Councillor Bell?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. On page 304 of our package, I'd just like to bring a little bit of attention to the OPP report. Having been on that committee, I got very familiar with reading through the reports on assaults and theft and all that kind of thing. But on page 304, it shows a nice chart about 10 top charges in Meaford in the months of November and December. And the number one is speeding. And so they're out, and that seems to be their number one area of focus that jumps out on that nice chart, and it collides with Gray Bruce in November and December, also speeding. And when you look at the chart for the larger area, there's a significant amount of drivers who failed to surrender their insurance card. And when we look at the chart for Meaford, there was one of the 16 who did that same activity. So I just wanted to bring the attention that the OPP report shows that speeding seems to be the number one problem.
Councillor Vickers.
Through your worship, I'd like to talk about another item.
Oh, certainly.
So I maybe jumped the gun there a little bit.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, could I just, before Councillor Vickers does that, can I just comment on the OPP report?
Yes, of course. I thought Councillor Vickers was commenting on that report too.
Thanks.
Please go ahead.
I just wanted to say that that chart is very specifically only about traffic offences. So I caution council to be careful about saying the number one problem in Meaford is speeding. That means that of the 22 traffic related offences, 16 were speeding, which makes total sense. But it doesn't mean that there is a speeding problem in the municipality.
Just for clarification, thank you. All right. And do you have another comment?
Yeah, just a question through your worship. Number A, the letter from the Canadian Heritage Canada Day 2022 grant funding. I noticed we got two of them. Did the municipality manage to slip an extra one in there and put one underneath Jennifer's name and one underneath your name, Matt?
Kind of. This year, there is actually two programs going on. We applied for our normal Canada Day grant, and that's one of these letters. But the other one is a grant specifically because, and let me get this the right anniversary because I will get it wrong, because it is Queen Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee in 2022. There was additional funds available for things to celebrate that Jubilee. So we thought we may as well pop in an application for that, and we'll do something on Canada Day to celebrate the Queen.
So I'm assuming this was you realized that this would be a pretty good chance of happening. So it was within budget, and like you had it in the budget, and do we know what we're spending the money on, sort of thing? Kind of excited. Maybe we'll have a big old party.
So through worship, our Canada Day budget actually anticipated some grants. These two grants that we applied for, we actually didn't get as much as we had applied for, but some of the items that we know we can't do for Canada Day anyway, so we just gear our programming to what the funds that we had. So
fair enough.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just in relation to that, we are getting a nice bit of money through these grants, and I'm wondering if we'll be giving anything additionally to the folks in Bogner and the optimists who do the Great Canada Day celebrations in our rural areas.
Your worship, so the funding that we applied for dealt with the Meaford events. We didn't get as much money as we anticipated, as I noted. So we'll just be removing some of the events that we had planned in Meaford. So the intent, this council gives grants to those two other organizations outside of those, and the grant was just for the Meaford events, from what I understand.
So nothing additionally, thank you.
And those two organizations are also eligible to apply for these grants themselves. The grants are for a specific event, not for the municipality.
Okay.
But the other grants to these other locations will not be cut from as a result of the lack of funding. It's good to know. Thank you. Anything else? Great. With that, we need to move on to a confirming bylaw. And this is a recommendation to be it resolved that bylaw 2022-18 being bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Municipality of Meaford at its regular meetings held in the month of March 2022 be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. And I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table. Councillor Bell, Councillor Kentner, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And that brings us to the conclusion of this agenda. Good discussions all. Thank you very much for your participation. I declare this